Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 77, The Amazonian Way. In front of Aaron stood an Amazonian lady with jet black hair, olive skin, and light brown eyes. She was holding the reins of her ferocious-looking stallion while standing near the beast. Behind her were her subordinates and other academy staff managing the check post. Usually, the matters related to the students' entrance and exit to and from the sanctuary were handled by the academy staff and Marla's subordinates. But Aaron acted like he didn't know about these things. Aaron greeted Marla, who was appointed at the checkpost as an apt representative of both sides, the Amazons and the academy. He made a fist out of his right hand and placed it over his right pec, just above the heart, while he bowed a little in front of her. This was a formal way of greeting the superiors in the customs of Amazons. Aaron had come to the sanctuary many times in the past timeline after he had started walking on the path of a berserker. Therefore, he had interacted with a lot of Amazons. Amazons respected everyone even when they were a matriarchal society. The male members in their ranks were treated as respectfully as their female counterparts. It's just that they didn't have any claim in family inheritance or any other important place in society. There were other small restrictions and rules placed on the males, but they weren't too demeaning or something difficult to follow. The Amazonian females had special rights. They would serve as the family heads of their respective families. The leader of any hunter or adventurer party would almost always be a female unless there's some special situation. Plus, the Amazonian women were free to have intimate relationships with almost anyone as long as consent was involved. The concept of marriage existed in them. But it wasn't forced upon. So usually, the females would go through the pregnancy without marrying the father of the child. The couple could choose to stick together to be there for their child or could get separated while ensuring that the child is adequately looked after. But great powers came with great responsibilities. The females were more responsible for taking care of their families and parties. They would be trained harder than their male peers from a very young age. And they would be the ones serving in the front lines in case of any conflict. The Amazon had their own ranking techniques especially suitable for females. These ranking techniques allowed the females in their ranks to assert dominance over their male peers despite the innate physical prowess advantage of the latter side. The Amazons were very particular about not letting these ranking techniques get out of their folds at any cost. The rankless entities had to sign an extremely restrictive contract to get access to these Amazonian ranking techniques. But any Amazonian girl would gladly sign the binding contract after observing the effects it had on the practicing female rankers. Overwhelming power was the way with which the Amazonians would make their presence known in society. The rule of the strong gaining more benefits was observed in almost every society. But it was observed more thoroughly by the Amazons, with advantages tilted towards the females. Coming back to Aaron's current situation. Marla was surprised a little by the kid's way of greeting her. The Amazonian greeting wasn't exactly a secret. But she didn't expect a first-year LA student to perform it with the right posture and apt bow while maintaining eye contact. The greeting was extended to the senior members of the Amazons by their juniors. So Marla didn't have to perform the same greeting. She just patted her stallion to calm it down and nodded her head at Aaron with a smile on her face before replying. Kid, it's good that you know the way of the Amazons. Therefore, I'll allow you to call me Miss Marla. You don't have to sweet-talk me into anything you know. I'll let you enter the forest as long as you have missions under your name and a clearance from Basank. You got it wrong, Miss Marla. I'm merely stating facts about your beauty. I'm sure you must have been told the same thing by hundreds of people if not thousands. I know a novice like me shouldn't talk to an adept like you without due prudence, but I couldn't help praising you a little after looking at you. Isn't there a saying in the Amazons? The feminine deserves all the good things that come its way. Maybe my little praise was already heading your way before I said it out loud. He. Kid, did you date an Amazon girl before coming here to LA? How can you know so many little things about our society? I can see that you are good at flattering the ladies. But I don't dislike it. Anyway, usually this procedure would be handled by the academy staff you see behind me. But I'll make an exception today. Show me your mission details. Aaron did not praise Marla without any reason. She was an excellent close combat expert. In the past timeline, she had taken Ken as her apprentice after seeing his potential. But in this timeline, he was bedridden. This was a perfect chance for the butcher to make Marla take him as her apprentice after displaying his potential. Ken didn't know that someone was screwing him over and over behind his back. He wasn't sure about taking Marla's offer yet. But the same offer was already eyed on by a vile evil he wasn't even aware of. Aaron wasn't delusional enough to think that these praises would be enough to make him replace Ken. The interaction was only supposed to make Marla see him in a better light. He still needed to prove that his caliber as an F-rank novice was as good as Ken's if not more. Aaron's spectral screen had a new prompt after Marla asked him to show his mission details. The prompt was asking permission to allow Marla to see the missions and the details he had taken under his name. The butcher allowed her to read the contents without any delay. So your name is Aaron Idril. Let's see. BTP of 14. Not bad. Recently registered with Basank. So many missions in one go. Are you trying to break a record or something? Aaron, the missions you've taken are all low-leveled but they increase in difficulty if you look at them collectively. Are you sure you can complete them all by staying 3 days in the forest? You might lose more merps than you would gain in the tally if you take on unnecessary risks. I'm sure, Miss Marla. I'm planning to finish all the missions in 2 days, in fact. Hee. I like your confidence. Let's see if you can complete all the missions in 2 days then. I'll give you a 3-star weapon if you can do that. Let's talk about a different reward after I'm done finishing everything served on my platter first. I'm sure a magnanimous Amazonian like you would grant me this simple request of mine. You want something else? Your ambitions seem higher than what I gave them credit for. All right, let's see your worth as a novice. Then, I'll see what I can do about your request. Saying that, Marla accessed her spectral screen and created a giant opening in the energy shield. Aaron could pass through the shield now to enter the sanctuary. The butcher bowed to Marla again before taking his leave. Marla's subordinates and the academy staff were shocked by the kid's confidence in talking to an adept ranker directly without even flinching. Somebody higher enough in the administrative ladder used his credentials to pull up Aaron's record and found out that he had a C-rank healer listed as his guardian in his records. Only that allowed the onlookers to make sense out of the kid's bold behavior. He was used to interacting with a C-rank entity. No wonder he could hold himself talking to a D-rank one. Lady Marla, you want me to follow the kid? Maybe he'll cheat to finish all his missions within 2 days to gain favor from you. One assistant professor from Marla's panel asked her. She thought the kid was a little impudent talking to Marla so casually like that. The excuse of watching over him was just that, an excuse. She wanted to reprimand the scoundrel so that he wouldn't make the same mistake again. All of Marla's panel was made of women. They were Amazonians too, just like Marla. But they were young and newly appointed by the settlement to serve under her. They hadn't yet mixed with the outside society much. So they couldn't think about a junior like Aaron approaching a senior like Marla even in their imaginations. Almera, how many times have I told you? This is not our settlement. The academy and the society outside our forested heaven have their own customs. You don't want to watch over him but teach him some form of lesson, don't you? Leave the boy to his devices. The test is to see if Aaron could complete the missions in 2 days or not. It is not about how he does it. And I'll ask him in detail about how he managed to achieve his feat if he achieves it, that is. If I find out that what Aaron did wasn't impressive enough or if he is lying, I'll just flat out reject him giving anything in return. Chapter 78, Dick Destroyer. A fleeting shadow could be seen traversing through the dense vegetation of a forest at amazing speed. It had feet covered in lightning. Every step it takes would generate an electric illumination that was visible even during the daylight. This shadow was none other than Aaron. He was executing blitz steps to increase his speed. First, it was to avoid any possible repercussions heading his way due to his talk with Marla. He knew about Almera and how she behaved. Second, it was to get to a specific spot to start off completing his missions. Aaron had accepted an array of missions that varied in their type, difficulty level, location, and ETCs, estimated times of completion. Ideally, he needed to be careful about doing any of these missions recklessly, but he had Reen with him. Aaron asked Reen to assume a random girl's avatar that she had eaten in the past. He gave her clothes and a mask to wear. He wore a mask as well. It would be better if Reen took action after she had assumed the shape of a human rather than shape-shifting in the middle of a crisis. She didn't need any artifacts to wear, so Aaron didn't give her any. Where are we going, Aaron? Reen asked in a 16-ish year girl's voice. She was following Aaron normally even while he was using blitz steps, sans any effort. Apparently, she didn't need any movement spell to keep up with an F-rank spell. We are going to our first mission site. The first mission is to collect 7 claw sets of F-rank wind wolves. We can also exchange their other body parts at Basank for more merit points. But I'm hungry, Aaron. I'll need to feed on their bodies. You can eat all the pack of wolves, except any 7 needed for my mission. We'll also have you eat anything you want during our travels. Let's quickly go to the pack's gnome lair now. We are short on time. Reen had her saliva dripping out of her mouth after Aaron confirmed he'll feed her with those innocent wind wolves. It's been a while since Reen had her last good meal. She had started eating human food now after Aaron fed her some as a trial. She didn't dislike it. But she found out that human food didn't give her the same type of satisfaction as her natural food. The Demona slime quickly established her mental connection with Aaron again to read his memories and route of the place. She quickly grabbed Aaron and lifted him in her arms before running off in the same direction at breakneck speed. She just couldn't wait anymore now that her feeding time was this close. The duo quickly reached the place. Aaron saw two wind wolves dispatched as sentries by the pack. He got down from Reen's Princess Carrie and told her to stay back and let him deal with it. Reen was unhappy Aaron was going to toy with her food, but she obeyed nonetheless. She got back and let Aaron handle them. The wolves saw the intruders and howled quickly after to let others in the pack know about the situation. They adopted a defensive position. Reen was still masking her aura and a lot of her powers. But the beastly senses couldn't be fooled. The beasts immediately came to the conclusion that Reen standing at the back was a bigger threat than the kid who was trotting about in front of them. Aaron retrieved his pair of daggers from the storage before wielding them in front of him. He was ready to execute blitz steps again. Aaron still couldn't use blitz steps at its fullest possible potential. That was because it gave him tunnel vision at high speeds. The tunnel vision made it difficult for him to land his blows on opponents with precision. Therefore, in his previous timeline, Aaron had used blitz steps only when he intended to travel from point A to point B at extreme speeds or when dodging an incoming attack heading his way. The past Aaron rarely used blitz steps during his attacks, because it made it difficult for him to face any incoming counter from a different direction in case his attack is somehow parried or deflected. Aaron has decided that he'll overcome the spell's shortcomings in this timeline. He needed practice and more practice to achieve this difficult feat. Today was as good a day as any to start with the same. Aaron saw the wolves were afraid of Reen standing behind him. They were trying to buy time so that the reinforcement could join them. Aaron needed to act fast if he wanted to take care of this mission without Reen's help. He couldn't let the reinforcement arrive before the two wolves are dead and done for. Blitz steps was executed. The wolves saw Aaron's feet getting coated in tongues of lightning before he almost vanished in front of them. But the beastly instincts allowed them to feel a puny kid had closed in on them from behind. The beasts were about to turn around and face their intruder, but one of them howled quickly after, unmistakably dripping in an insurmountable amount of pain. Aaron had cut the balls of one of the sentry beasts from behind them. He also chopped off its thing and smiled with unmasked cruelty in his eyes. Like his long-awaited dream has been finally committed. The wolf that had its cojones and thing cut off jumped off in the air quickly after and started running madly. The other beast was first startled and then alert by the sudden turn of events. The altered beast quickly shifted his position and secured his groin in the opposite direction. He used his claws to attack the vile creature that was targeting their balls and mailhoods. Aaron was ready for the beast's attack. He used both the daggers in his hands to block the attack. But the wolf had covertly launched a wind blade attack in that move. The mono-powered ethereal wind blade couldn't be parried with Aaron's daggers and it landed on Aaron's chest. Aaron's shirt tore up quickly as a result. But the F-rank chainmail armor he was wearing inside blocked the attack from harming his body. But the armor couldn't block the impact the wind blade had generated. Aaron was thrown in the air at a distance before landing on the ground. Now Aaron was 10 m away from the altered beast. The agitated beast had joined him by then and was growling at him with hateful eyes. The beasts had forgotten about Reen in the heat of the battle now. They only cared about the fight's outcome. Aaron knew things had gotten difficult. But he wouldn't have it any other way. This was the best battle to test the thrill of close combat style while venting his frustration from the previous timeline. Aaron threw both his daggers in the air right above the beast's position. The altitude was high, so it would take some time for them to land on the ground. The sudden dagger's throw distracted the beasts a little and they couldn't help looking up, eyeing the weapons that had the power to harm them. Before they could check the position of the vile creature who was the owner of those daggers though, they realized he had again seemingly vanished from his previous position. Aaron appeared right over one of the beast's heads and touched its forehead with his right index finger. Reo. Aaron spoke the name of the attack to subconsciously execute it in the right way at the right time. A beam of lightning was generated from the tip of the same index finger that was touching the beast's forehead. The beam easily pierced the beast's hide and his skeletal obstruction before destroying the brain matter within. But it couldn't be contained in that space. The beam was seen piercing the other side of the beast's head, coming out from the bottom of its jaws. The beast that faced the Reo point blank was dead then and there, but its body was yet to hit the ground. Aaron knew the beast that had its mailhood chopped was going to attack him soon after. He used the dead beast's pierced head as a platform to jump in the air. He executed blitz steps at the same time to make his jump gain more altitude. Aaron executed blitzerung as soon as he grabbed the daggers that he had thrown in the air beforehand. A layer of lightning soon covered him. It generated a repulsive field around him that nullified the wind attacks launched by the other beast. Aaron got to behind the dead beast by then and slashed at its balls and penis with his daggers. Only then did the dead beast's body hit the ground. Aaron still had blitzerung active, but he knew he wouldn't be able to maintain it for a long time. He quickly launched a frontal assault on the remaining beast without worrying about the incoming attack. The beast launched wind blades after wind blades with its limb swings, but they were all deflected by Aaron's defense-type spell. He quickly closed in on the beast, used one of his daggers to parry the claw attack from the beast, and the remaining dagger was lodged in the beast's head through its jaws from down below. Aaron's defense-type spell vanished. But the beast was also no more by then. The wind-wolf stickless body was dropped on the ground hard in front of its slayer. Aaron could hear the approaching pack as it had started surrounding his position. He knew he was soon going to face an entire pack, but he wasn't worried. If you want to blame anyone for the way you died, blame that fucking wind-wolf that bit my dick off and killed me in my previous life. I'll demand repayment from your entire race for that blasphemy, you dick-destroyer race of wolves. Chapter 79, Sharing a Secret. Aaron was done with killing 8 more wolves the same way before he ran out of mana. He then ordered Reen to start her long-awaited feeding session after securing the bodies of his kills in his storage space. Reen had used her deterrence as a demon beast to make the approaching wolf pack halt in its steps. Then she only allowed 6 more beasts to attack Aaron in the pair of 2 so that he could practice his spells and battle style. Aaron had stopped using Blitzerung after its first time. The spell was taxing on his mana reserve. And he didn't have a ranking technique yet to recover from the state of lack of mana quickly. Aaron's clothes faced the burnt of the wolf's attack as a result. His chainmail armor could now be seen in the open. He had cuts and bruises on his skin due to the effects of wind blades and claw slashes aimed at him by the wolves. Aaron had understood a lot of his flaws in that controlled battle. First, Blitz Steps was incompatible with close combat style no matter how he executed it. Blitz Steps gave Aaron the element of surprise when attacking his opponent. But it was a dual-edged sword. It also sent him right in the opponent's attacking range. If his attack was failed or deflected at that time, the counter would be too heavy for him to face it without the artifact or defense spell. And Aaron couldn't see the counter coming at him due to the tunnel vision. He had the means to dodge that attack with his Blitz Steps, but the same spell had become a reason for him to not see the incoming counter. Plus, Aaron's berserking habits made him unable to fully utilize any openings properly. Other aspects needed some amount of fine-tuning as well. But Aaron needed to prioritize a few of them first before thinking of doing anything else. Reen was soon done consuming the pack of wind wolves one by one. Her devouring speed had increased and she didn't need to shapeshift her whole body to digest her prey now. Reen would just extend her arm and it would extend like a lasso before forming a slimy mass of a bubble at the place where her palm was. She would drop that slimy matter on her prey while it was still connected to her torso through the very lasso-like semi-transparent thing that once acted like her arm. The magic beasts would get digested thoroughly inside that slimy bubble. Then the nutrients and purified mana after the digestion would travel back to Reen through her lasso-like arm. Reen was satisfied after she ate almost 24 wind wolves this way. She retracted her arm to its normalcy and used the same hand to control her burp in a Leda-like manner. Her mannerisms were perfect, thanks to reading through Aaron's memories. But the noise of that burp was earth-shaking, making her seem like a demoness that she was. Where are we heading next, Aaron? Reen asked Aaron, who was busy changing into a new shirt. He drank an F-rank healing potion that he had obtained from Isaac's party before replying. We have saved a lot of time on this mission. Ideally, students are suggested to lure the sentry wind wolves away from their pack 1 or 2 at a time before commencing battle. It takes a lot of time and planning. But our frontal assault has cut down on that etc. tremendously. Today, we'll focus on completing missions like these nearby while completing the herbs collection mission simultaneously. It won't be too difficult for us to locate the herbs with your ability anyway. Tomorrow, we'll head inside the deeper parts of the forest before returning to the Academy's checkpost. Reen just nodded her head at Aaron's plan. She was happy as long as she got to eat plenty of food in the process. Aaron got back to the Academy's checkpost after completing all his missions. The site had a facility managed by Bizank for students to deposit their in-mission items. The butcher visited that facility and deposited all the items in one go. There were magic beast carcasses, all kinds of herbs, and minerals. They were all related to his missions. Aaron had also mixed in random items that he had picked up while doing the missions. These items will also be converted into random merps based on their actual values. Aaron also added an E-rank mana blessing he had collected from the Ozen Woods in the list of things he claimed to have found in the sanctuary. The Bizank staff was surprised before getting all excited about Aaron's luck. He was ready to offer the kid some merps in thousands to get the MB from him. But Aaron denied that offer. Aaron only showed the E-rank mana blessing so that it gets added into the Bizank records and its source could be justified. He knew the amount he was offered for the mana blessing was good. But it wasn't the best he could get for the stone. Especially considering the upcoming event. The butcher's account was credited with around 3k merps for all the missions he had completed so far. He now had around 17k merps in his reserve. Aaron got out of the Bizank's collection facility feeling refreshed. He hadn't slept much in his stay in the forest, but the heavy merps account became the reason for his rejuvenation. Completing all the missions in 2 days was a pinch. The butcher wouldn't have been able to pull it off had it not been for Reen. The day was going to set. Aaron soon found Marla near her cherished stallion. He quickly made his way towards her. Miss Marla, I'm back. Yo. Aaron, right? Did you complete all the missions you were assigned with?
Yes,
Ma'am. You can check my Basank record if you want. Don't mind if I do then. Marla immediately sent Aaron a read request to access his Basank records. The latter accepted it just as quickly. Let's see. Herb's collection missions have gone smoothly. Too smoothly if I may add. But it might be that you are just that lucky. The beasts' carcasses have taken some damage. It seems you've ruined some parts of their bodies. There was a penalty of merps for that. But overall you did well. The earning is around 3k merps. Too bad, the Academy doesn't convert merps into extals. Otherwise, it would have been a pretty good way to exploit the system. Aaron didn't say anything in response. He let her analyze the Basank records her way. He could have dealt with the beasts with more finesse to make more profit out of the deal. But that would have been detrimental here. Marla needed a weak point, a blemish in Aaron to make sense out of his achievement. To perfect a result would raise suspicion in everyone's mind. Aaron, I'm satisfied with your result. You wanted something else instead of a 3-star weapon, right? State your reward. I'll accept it if it's within reason. Aaron was waiting for Marla to say those words. He replied to her without wasting time. Miss Marla. I know you'd appreciate a straight shooter. I want to be your apprentice and learn close combat style from you. You want to be my apprentice? Ah, you must have been there in the crowd when I offered it to the Riverine kid. You even know about my path. But sorry kid, I doubt you have what it takes to be my apprentice. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to underestimate you. It's just that a BTP of 14 isn't going to cut it if you want to follow the regime I will set for my apprentice. I'd suggest you ask for some other reward. Please hear me out, Ma'am Marla. I have a lightning element, same as you. I'm sure you'll find out that I'm better suited for your apprenticeship than anyone else in my year. I might not be the best candidate when it comes to the BTP value. But I have what it takes to stand at the top of my class if given enough time and nourishment by the Academy. Oh. Tall claim kid. I suppose you seem smart enough to come up with a way to prove that claim. Indeed ma'am. You can watch my performance at intra-class and inter-class battles to know about my caliber. And I'll let you in on an academic secret I accidentally got privy to if you allow me. You can consider that as my gift to you for being my mentor. Aaron flashed a cunning smile after saying that. Marla was hooked. What is it? Marla's voice got lower when she asked it. Aaron came closer to her and almost whispered what he had to say in her ears. I heard the conversation between 2 Academy staff and got to know this information. LA is going to organize an auction event for first-year students 4 days from now on. You know what that means, right? Marla was surprised by Aaron's revelation. The auction event was as important for professors as it was for the students. That's because they would have an auction event of their own after the kids' event took place. The same restrictions and then some more were implemented in the professors' auction event as well. That's why knowing about the event came with a certain advantage. Marla could immediately stock up on merps to get maximum benefits out of the event. Of course, the stakes were bigger in the auction event meant for E and D rank entities. So the prices for products getting sold in the event were also higher. Kid, I'll have to liquidate a lot of my assets. If I find out that you were lying. Rest assured, Ma'am Marla. I'm not lying. Why would I lie to the person who I want to take as my mentor? Plus, why do you think I decided to complete all the missions? Aaron and Marla both smiled cunningly at each other after knowing about this. Aaron also let his potential mentor know that he was going to sell an E-rank mana blessing in the auction meant for E and D rank entities. Marla didn't need an E-rank MB for her anymore. But she could tip off the professors under her about the product that was getting auctioned. They could prepare in advance for the same. Aaron scored some more brownie points in Marla's book. She couldn't help but say. All right, Aaron. If the news about a certain event is true, and you perform well in the ranking wars, I'll take you as my apprentice. I'll give you a worthy gift if you get selected. And I'll still give you a decent reward even if you fail to do so. Is that all right? Certainly, Miss Marla. I look forward to your teachings. Aaron bowed to Marla before turning his back and walking off in the opposite direction. Marla's horse snorted its nose in response to the lad's suave. But the D-rank Amazoness couldn't help observing his back far longer than she cared to admit. Chapter 80, Levin's Test. Aaron. You are back. Did you complete your missions? Jake asked as soon as he entered the dorm house and found Aaron reading a scroll in the living room. Oh, yeah. They were all low-leveled ones, anyway. Did you find out about Adapt Levin's classes? Only then did Jake realize why his friend was waiting for him in the living room. It wasn't that the guy felt like talking to him after his missions to vent out any built-up excitement or frustrations he had. Aaron was only focused on what he had asked Jake to do. The latter smiled mirthlessly before replying. I did. You were right. Adapt Levine did put a notice regarding her upcoming classes. She says she'll be conducting them twice a week. She'll be starting them a few days after the first round of intra-class ranking war commences. This hack is charging double the MERPs than what Edward Jenner is charging. But there's a way to get around it. Day after tomorrow, she will organize a practical test for all the novice POD 1ers. The ones who pass that test will only be required to pay a meager amount of MERPs. The discounted MERPs charge is way lesser than Jenner's charges. It seems she only wants to get top students for herself at the expense of discouraging a majority of mediocre ones. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'll be able to pass the test. I can handle elementary potions if I know about the exact procedure. But I'll not be able to make even a 1-star F rank potion. And the test needs at least a 2-star outcome in the same rank to clear it. Jake conveyed his lack of optimism in clearing the test. The creation of F rank potions was a lot similar to elementary potions in many ways. The only difference was that the potion in making liquids need to be imbued with one's mana at the right time in the right quantity. Other subtle steps needed the intervention of mana imbuing from a potioneer's side. The imbuing part wasn't difficult itself. Anyone could do it. But the test of the potion makers lied in imbuing their mana without disrupting the POD 1ing process. There were numerous ways with which the potion in making could get affected. The most common way among them was imbuing the ingredients with elementalized mana where it was not needed and not regularizing the mana elementalization where it was needed. Plus, the inherent nature of a ranker also had the power to affect the potion's quality positively or negatively depending upon the way they implemented it in the manufacturing process. Absolute control over one's mana imbuing, spells, right timing, and a hint of sixth sense was necessary to become a successful POD 1er. Don't worry, Jackie. A day is enough for us to polish our skills. I'll teach you. We'll convert this living room into a potion lab and practice our skills here. Are you in? Aaron offered a helping hand to his housemate. Jake never expected the latter to be this approachable. He had come to terms with Aaron's recluse nature. But the guy still had some surprises in store for him. Are you sure? Of course, I'm in. I want to be a POD 1er too, you know. That's where all the money is. But it'll still be difficult to crack Adapt Levin's test. I'm not that skilled in potion making yet. Don't get me wrong. I trust your potion making and teaching skills. Madam Nina must have taught you well. But you had just broken into F rank before coming to the academy. So all your in-lab experiences are only related to making elementary potions. We don't even know the potion's name which is going to serve as a test. We only have enough time to practice potion making for 2 potions, if we cut it close. If they don't appear in the test, it's game over for us. Plus, we don't have any lab instruments. And I can guess we don't have enough MERPs to get the sets from the academy even with both our accounts combined. Unless. Jake paused midway and looked at Aaron, receiving a smirk in response. The latter proceeded to take out all the instruments required to set up their lab. Unless I have the instruments. Come on, man. How can you think Aunt Nina would send me empty-handed without the right apparatus for potion making? We'll still need to buy a few things and some necessary ingredients. But that shouldn't stop us from turning this living room into a full-fledged potion lab. Don't worry about my skills. They are enough to make us pass the test and enter Levin's elite club of students. And I know which potion is going to appear in Levin's test. We only need to practice that potion's manufacturing for the entire day. That is enough time for me to teach you in making a 2-star variant of the solution. How do you know which potion is going to appear in the test? The same way I knew about the incoming assassinations and bandit attacks on Jason's carriage when we were coming here. Why won't you tell me then, what is your source? And will you ever give me a complete piece of news without hiding anything from me? Trust me, man. The less you know about the source, the better. All you need to do now is go to sleep and wake up early tomorrow with me. We'll hit the lab as soon as we can, take the necessary apparatus and ingredients from it, and start setting things up in this room. You'll skip the homeroom lectures. You will have to stop attending the homeroom lectures most of the time from tomorrow on if you want to keep up with me. Don't depend on freebies, Jake. Heed my advice. Invest in the knowledge that is worth your time. Your father is still in the city of Lionhearts, right? Tell him to send you all the extra Ixtals he has. Ask him to liquidate some of his wealth if he can. You are going to need a lot of MERPs in the coming days. Aaron talked with Jake for a while, giving him a detailed plan of what he was going to do. Jake was really impressed with him. But he had noticed that a lot of his planning was based on certain conditions that may or may not happen. Jake didn't know from where he got the confidence to base all his planning on his self-made assumptions or seeming information leaks. All right. I'm in. But you will pay the MERPs for all our ingredients and apparatus. I will return the invested MERPs with 10% interest only after your planning comes to fruition. 10%? Jackie, my man. I'm taking all the risks in this deal. I'll take 20% and that is final. Don't start haggling like I'm some sort of a customer of yours in your shop now. Ha. Fine. Have it your way then. We still have Edward's classes if this endeavor of yours fails. It'll be fun to see your face if all your investment goes to waste. Ha ha ha. Aaron chucked at Jake's taunt. He didn't feel angry. The guy was trained as a businessman from his childhood. He wouldn't take unnecessary risks in the market he was unsure of. It was Aaron's job to make a frugal person like Jake bleed merps, no matter how cautious he was. And it'll be fun to see yours when you have to pay 20% more in a few days. Chapter 81, Rankless Party Members. I will now announce the names of the students who have passed my test. A white-haired lady in her 60s could be seen saying this in front of a bunch of LA students. They were all standing inside a potion lab, near their respective tables and apparatus. All had worn white lab coats that were all F-rank items due to the protective runes inscribed on them. The lady was none other than Lavigne de Montmorency. She looked like a graceful old lady. She only had wrinkles around her eyes. And her gray-white hair attested to her long experience in potion making. Jake was very excited. Not because he had performed well in the test. But he felt like he had done the most inconspicuous, borderline legalized form of cheating and had gotten away with it. You feel accomplished when your efforts are met with success. But you feel unmatched exhilaration when your efforts and luck join hands to make you a success story. That's right. Whatever Aaron had predicted came to be true. Jake and Aaron had only practiced in an agility-based F-rank potion named Gotti. They practiced till midnight yesterday and managed to completely nail down the potion's manufacturing. Jake had it relatively easy because his element and inherent nature were made for poti-1ing. But he was surprised by Aaron's expertise in poti-1ing despite him having a not-so-compatible aptitude in the field. But accomplishing this feat with Aaron's help had made Jake a tad bit nervous as well. Now he was ready to pay 20% interest to make yesterday's efforts worthwhile. Finally Jake heard the name which sounded like music to his ears. His and Aaron's names were among the only 5 students who had passed Levin's test out of 40 budding poti-1ers. These 5 students would only need to pay a meager amount of merps to attend Levin's lectures and lab sessions from now on. The failed students either need to pay an exorbitant amount of merps for the lectures or find a different professor entirely. Most were going to choose the latter option. The failed students were jealous of the only 5 students who had cleared the test. Some even doubted the test was fair or not after the result was out. But Adapt Levin's decision was final. And nobody dared to go against it. The students were discharged after the result was announced. Jake and Aaron made it to the canteen for their supper. They met up with Steve Austin and Becky White. The party-to-be was going to decide on its 5th member today. So what do you guys think about Renita? Steve asked while taking a bite out of his burger. The guy was a burger maniac. He had 3 burgers on his platter. The 4th one was in his hands, half of which had disappeared by now with the most recent bite. Binge Eater Jake replied to Burger Maniac Steve in the same manner, with an equal amount of burgers plus some fries. Sullivan Jr. was a food connoisseur, he treated all good food equally. Let's see. Renita is going for a ranger class, so you chose her, right? I mean, we don't know anything about her besides that fact. Aaron is a close combat expert of our party. He'll be our main damage dealer. He'll be leading our charge. I can take up a ranking technique related to enhanced HP, making me a tank of our group. Of course, my spell choices will be related to personal and party defense as well. Becky here is going for a healer class. So the position of our party healer is covered too. Steve is our berserker. He can take up the aggro and coordinate with Aaron in our offensive. And in the end, he would serve as our finisher. Now the only thing we need is a ranger who can take care of our long-range attacks while acting as our guide. But how can we be sure Renita is a good choice for our party just because she is a ranger? Jake, the businessman in you just doesn't take a day off, does he? You say all the right things but they don't contribute to anything. I'm not saying we should recruit Renita right away. But I feel she'd be a good fit for our party. Becky, what do you think? Steve asked Becky about her opinion while trying to take the fries from Jake's platter. But his hand was soon slapped away by Jake's. The latter only looked like he was distracted by his burger. But apparently, he wasn't letting go of his fries. I don't have a problem with Renita either. But we should wait for the intra-class ranking war to see her performance. In fact, why limit our observation to Renita? Wouldn't it be better for all of us if we get to know about each other's weaknesses and strengths before finalizing this party? It seemed that Becky was thinking of exiting the party even before it was formed. Steve tried to explain to her with the following words. Becky, I formed this party after considering everything. Although I don't know about our individual battle powers, I know how to find the right people and make them tick like clockwork. This is the best I can find right now. To be honest, I was going for some other people to form a party with. Jake and Aaron were not my first choice. but they were among the few people who already had their BTPs hidden even before the explanation about how to set the BTP visibility to private was given to us. That made me intrigued and I chose them. Even you, Becky, were not my first choice for a healer. But healers are always sought after party members. I know I won't be able to retain them when they are offered a position in another party led by someone stronger than me. The ranking war performance you are talking about can help us come up with our battle style. But it won't be a deal breaker in the formation of this party. Unless, you take a step back and decide to join someone else, that is. Steve had things figured out it seemed. He wasn't wrong in saying that healers, particularly, good healers were always recruited with zeal in any party formation. But he had dissed Becky a little by indirectly calling her not so good of a healer. Umph. I know my BTP value is low and you guys know about it. But healers don't require high BTP values, to begin with. I'm not going to fight on the front lines. All that matters is my healing ability. And if there's someone average among us, it has to be this guy. Becky pointed her finger at Aaron who was busy keeping to himself and eating his fill. Aaron only looked up and saw Becky pointing him out, post his name was called out. Ha 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 ha. Becky, why don't you wait for intra-class ranking wars to start before you embarrass yourself with premature judgment? Jake LOL'd at Becky who had her nose flared up. She was trying to make Aaron the next target of the group's discussion so that any criticism coming her way could be diverted. Aaron decided to give her a breather. It doesn't matter if I or you are average or not. We are all standing at the start line. Forget about finding each other's strengths and weaknesses at this stage. Strengths can be enhanced with the right choice of spells and weaknesses can be covered with the right set of strategies. We should prioritize finalizing the party members first and then focus on fine-tuning our teamwork. A team's might is stronger than any individual ranker at our levels. Therefore, Steve's approach is right. But let's not wait until the intra-war starts. A lot of potential teams are also waiting for that event to take place so they've left some seats open in their ranks. The influential party leaders would start hunting for their remaining numbers as soon as they came to know about a student's worth. That can make our recruitment process much harder than it is right now. I don't have a problem with Renita. She will. She'd be a good ranger. But why limit ourselves to only her? Aaron smirked and looked at Steve. The latter raised his brows before responding him with a question of his own. Aaron, I'm not trying to belittle our little group here. But man, let's face it. We are not exactly what you'd call extraordinary. A student with higher BTP values and higher caliber won't join us. The guys in the middle have already been hired into their respective parties. And making someone weaker than us into one of our party members will be detrimental to our entire party. So wouldn't it be better if we go for a 5-pronged formation than a 7-pronged one? Steve concluded and waited for Aaron to answer his question before having another bite of his meal. He had subconsciously started treating Aaron as someone whose opinions mattered to him. 5-pronged formation meant having 5 party members in a party while 7-pronged formation indicated that a party contained 7 party members. Usually, the parties with similar numbers listed in their ranks would fight among each other. If a well-synced 7-pronged party were to fight with a party of 7 members who could only effectively deliver the battle prowess of a 5-pronged party, then it would be an easy win for the former. It was better if they limited their numbers and fought with another 5-pronged party than risking fighting with a stronger team. At least that's what Steve thought. I'm not trying to get anyone higher or lower BTP value in our fold. I'm saying we should hire someone with exceptional potential. Someone who doesn't know about their BTP value yet. Aaron let that thought sink in among his potential party members. Almost everyone understood the meaning behind that statement. They turned their heads in his direction in unison with clear disbelief painted on their faces. Jake was the one who could find the right words to confirm their mutual suspicion. Aaron, are you, perhaps talking about rankless students? Chapter 82, Party Without a Healer. Aaron was expecting this kind of reaction from the people gathered around his table. Rankless students were usually left alone to their devices. That's because they didn't have the qualifications to fight alongside novice rankers due to their ordinary, non-mana powers. LA would match up a 7-pronged party with another one of the same numbers in them. Despite there being rankless members on either side or not, rankless students would be targeted first by the opponent party and roll that advantage into a victory. So no novice party would take up any rankless member. But Aaron was suggesting that they pick up 2 more members from the same rankless lot. Yes, I'm talking about rankless people. But we will not list them as our party members until they break through into the novice rank. Consider them as our reserve members. I am sure no novice party would be seeking any rankless students to join their team even as a reserve member. And the students would feel elevated by the fact that they are sought by a novice team even before their official breakthrough. I don't think we'll face any obstruction in doing this. The reason for this unusual move is simple. I know 2 students who would show tremendous potential once they break through into F rank. Don't ask me the source, but it's a solid piece of news you guys can count on. We will not do anything crazy like hiring rankless party members and fighting alongside them. That'd be suicidal. It's better to call quits on a match than perform something fantastical like this. What we'll do instead is keep them around with us till they break their ranks. And we can make them join our party once that happens. Steve, I'll give you the name of those students in a few days. Ensure that you approach them the right way and make them join our party as our reserve members. But we need to nurture ourselves before we can think about nurturing the talents of the future. We need to perform well in intra-class wars to make our recruitment process smoother. The strong would only like to shake hands with the strong, after all. Aaron said this and then shifted their conversation over their ID stone communication by opening an audio channel. Steve, Becky, and Jake knew he was going to talk about something private that he didn't want any other student to hear. I will share another piece of information. We all need plenty of MERPs in all our accounts. Jake and I have already liquidated most of our money into MERPs to prepare for a certain event. You need to do the same. All your BTP values are lower than 14, so you can't take up any missions from Bizank yet. Therefore, you won't be able to earn MERPs through completing missions. That leaves you guys with only one option. You have to convert a lot of your money into MERPs within these 2 days. I'd say convert almost all of the extals you have. Because this event will require a lot of MERPs in your account to maximize your profits. Otherwise, you'd fall into LA's debt trap. This event will have the power to influence our party's battle potential. It can give us the advantage we need to beat currently promising teams with seemingly stronger party members in them. Therefore, Jake and I are risking sharing this information with you. Should Renita decide to join us, Steve, make sure you give the same hint to her as well. After all, the party is as strong as its weakest member. Jake was glad Aaron had decided to share this news with their party members. They needed to be strong as a team as well as individuals for them to keep on winning on every front. Jake was the one who had asked Aaron to give this piece of news to Steve and Becky as well. The latter pondered about it for a while before agreeing. Otherwise, if having more MERPs in your account was as important as Aaron had claimed, the advantage that had come with having them would be limited to 2 out of 5 party members. That'd be detrimental to them as a party in the long run. Aaron, what are you talking about? What event and what is this all about accumulating MERPs by burning our extals reserve? Becky tried asking Aaron, but all she heard was static from the audio channel, which Aaron had closed soon after. He had indicated that no further information will be provided on this topic. The team returned to talking normally after the ID stone communication was put to rest. All right, Aaron. I don't know about Becky. But I'll follow your advice. I'm sure we can find plenty of uses for our MERPs even if the event doesn't take place. So there's no harm in doing it. Is there anything else you want to add? Steve was the first to recover. He was decisive when he needed to be. Yeah. Steve, your berserking path suits you. Aaron paused for a while before looking at Becky and continuing. But I can't say the same about you, Becky. What do you have against me, Aaron? Why are you guys criticizing my path all the time? Becky was unhappy with Aaron again zeroing on her seemingly mediocre talent. But that latter verbally marched on without caring about her feelings. I'm saying this for your good. Of course, I'm being selfish here as well. Because improving you would give me the chance to earn more MERPs in future. In a way, I'm investing in you to get my returns. But that doesn't change the fact that your prospects would be wasted on you being a healer if you don't heed my advice. You can't become an exceptional healer with your fire element. Plus, your inherent nature is lividness, turning an ordinary fire into a dark bluish-gray one. Even if there are healing spells for your element, most of them are not suited for party healing. What's more, the healing spells would keep on getting rarer as you progress further in your path as a healer while having such elemental affinity and inherent nature. How about being a mage? Your affinity and inherent nature are better suited to becoming a mage. I'm sure the Academy's consultation must have also pointed to the same thing. So I can only guess that your drive to become a healer despite all that must be related to your commitment to someone or something. But think carefully about it. Do you want to compromise with your career for the reason you feel is worth doing it now? Life doesn't give second chances to everybody, you know. Becky got quiet after hearing Aaron's remark. He was right. It was her insistence that she become a healer due to reasons known only to her. But a voice of reason had sprung back in her head again, telling her that the recluse and rude boy in front of her was right. Becky wanted to defend her stance, but Aaron cut her off right away. He wasn't interested in her reason to become a healer. He only cared about his party members becoming strong enough to help him beat up even stronger teams. He tried to make Becky tread on the right path so that she could become an effective member of his team, enabling him to get the maximum usage out of her. All of this was his investment to gain more MERPs, which would become stepping stones to his success in this timeline. You should keep the reason for your choice to become a healer to yourself, Becky. We'll not pry into it. What we want from you is you give your best to the party. And being a healer, ain't it? But if Becky drops the idea of being a healer, who would be the party's healer in our upcoming battles? Jake couldn't help asking. The businessman in him wanted to prevent Aaron from advising this to Becky. It could rob their party of a healer that they needed. Although he understood the benefits of long-term gains, he wasn't too hyped about suffering in the present for it. Remember the two rankless students I talked about? One of them would be an awesome healer for our party. She would break into the novice rank soon enough. But it would still take a month. For better or worse, we'll have to participate in the compulsory interclass battle without any healer in our ranks. Don't worry. Healers won't have much to do in ranking wars, at least in the beginning. We would have gotten our compatible ranking techniques and spells by the time it's our time to take part in interclass battles. If Becky becomes a mage, she can cast an AoE whenever it gets difficult for us to find an opening. Of course, Becky would become a glass cannon after becoming a mage. So Jake will always have to stay together with her. The offense would be handled by Steve, a ranger, and I. I'm telling you all this so that you could get a clear idea about your role in the party and choose your spells and techniques accordingly. I don't want any of you to be clueless in that department when you are offered those choices in the upcoming event. Chapter 83, Student Welfare and LA's Interests. I don't want any of you to be clueless in that department when you are offered those choices in the upcoming event. Aaron concluded that statement and finished his grub at the same time. He left the table, picking up his tray to throw the leftover in the dustbin, leaving the group to their devices. The butcher wanted a strong team. But he couldn't just join a strong team that he knew would become successful in the future. First, they wouldn't take a guy like him in their ranks. At least not right now. And second, Aaron didn't want to alter the future too drastically by joining their ranks and becoming famous along with them. It would be in his favor if an underdog team slowly developed over time, enabling him to control it the way he wanted. Up till now, Aaron had replaced certain personnel in getting the benefits while keeping the outcome of the event largely the same as the previous timeline. For example, Aaron had only tried to replace Ken in taking Marla's apprenticeship. But he didn't aim for Marla to take another student as her apprentice apart from the protagonist. Of course, he knew no matter what he did, the future would inevitably change as he kept on introducing small changes to benefit from them. But he couldn't just keep following the same tried and tested path only to end up the same way as his previous life, just to maintain his advantage of knowing about the future. That's why Aaron decided to nurture his party. He had done all he could. Now it was up to them to follow his advice or not. 2 days before the intraclass ranking war. Day of the auction event. An official piece of news started circulating rapidly across the first-year novice rankers. LA was going to conduct an auction event at 5 p.m. for them, just after the homeroom lectures got over. The items for grab would be ranking techniques, spells, artifacts, and potions related to the F rank. The initial prices of these items had been set lower than their usual prices if students were to get them from Novice's treasury. They could get an affordable deal in the auction as long as the things that they aimed for weren't aimed by others with bigger pockets. MERPS was going to be the only official currency used in the auction event. But currently, the Extals to MERPS conversion ratio was horrible, to say the least. It was 135 MERPS for 1 Extal when Aaron had converted his wealth into the Academy's currency. From that day, the conversion ratio kept on getting worse until it hit 70 MERPS/Extal when the auction was declared today. Students only had this morning to convert their Extals into MERPS if they wanted to participate in the auction with a sufficient amount in their account. And they couldn't ask for support from their homes because it was too late for that. So they had to accept that wretched conversion rate in their desperation to earn more MERPS. What the students didn't realize was that their desperation generated by mass hype had made them forget that they wouldn't gain any benefit compared to them buying the items normally from the novice treasury. So the students converting their Extals into LA's currency would not benefit from the auction event even if they were to get the items at lower prices than what they'd get from the novice's treasury. A few students understood this marketing gimmick 101, but they couldn't help but follow in the same footsteps of those who didn't. Because the auction event might contain certain items that aren't usually available in the novice treasury. They couldn't just let other students grab what could be theirs if they were to just sacrifice a little bit of their wealth. Of course, hope wasn't lost for the students who didn't have any financial backing or those who wanted to retain their Extals due to the wretched conversion rate. There was a way to pay the merit points in the auction event without having to convert your money into MERPS. Students could raise the betting amount in the auction event with their monthly allowance in advance. Each student could bet up to a year worth of MERPS, that is around 11k MERPS in the auction event. The more the amount that was used in the auction event, the more will be the number of months that a student's account would remain uncredited each month. Every month a student would be credited with 1000 MERPS in their account. If a student uses 1000 MERPS from this month plus makes use of 5k MERPS advance that was availed to him by LA to buy ranking technique, their account won't get accredited with 1000k/month for the next 5 months. But this was not all. A huge number of job postings were released on the same day when the These jobs pay MERPs to students in advance so that they could use these MERPs into the auction event. The students could take up odd jobs across various fields in the academy to make up for their low balance at the cost of signing a binding contract with the respective academy department that had employed them. So if a student was in a MERP's crunch even after using the monthly allowances in advance, they would have to sign the binding contract of employment with the academy department to get an advance. Naturally, the amount paid in advance would be less than what normally that job would entail had they accepted it without focusing on the advance amount. But now the situation had forced the students to take up these jobs so that they could get their hands on the compatible techniques and spells. This was a debt trap arranged by LA to make students more productive at the academy while enabling them to get the techniques that they wanted. If a student chooses to partake in the event with their overwhelming wealth, they are allowed to do so. They just had to pay a little extra than usual. If a student wasn't willing to invest their wealth or if they were unable to, they could pay with their time and hard work to make up for it by signing a binding employment contract. Either way, students would get higher ranked items at relatively lower prices in one go, and LA would be the biggest beneficiary no matter which way the novice rankers chose. The students that had chosen the way of the binding contract would have to serve their roles while tending to their studies in the academy. Their practice and usual study would obviously suffer because of their job, but they had to find a middle ground between both the tasks. Most students, including the ones with sufficient funds at home, ended up signing employment contracts due to their low balance at the time of the auction event. They were not given enough time to arrange for help from anyone outside the academy. Only students like Aaron who had already converted their extals into MERPs were not caught between a rock and a hard place. That's right. There were indeed other students, apart from Aaron and his party members, who had chosen to convert their extals into MERPs a few days back. But that was either due to pure coincidence or conversion that took place in anticipation of the auction event. LA would randomly shift between having an auction event for a particular year or not during each academic year. So it wasn't that the students could say for sure if the event would take place this year. When there was no auction event, the students had to purchase their spells and techniques from the novice treasury the normal way at usual prices. Of course, the monthly allowance advance and binding employment contracts would be made available even in the case of no auction event, enabling the students to get the things that they want and paying them up through various means. The binding employment contracts were made more student-friendly when there was no auction event. It was done so that the students who didn't get to experience the auction event would not feel that they had been cheated. The extal to MERPs conversion had always been kept dynamic, preventing anyone from predicting the incoming auction event. Every other possible measure was taken to make the event as surprising as it was intended to be. Because in surprise, lies LA's advantage of making more money off of wealthy students and employing more ordinary students into their folds at a lower cost. Almost no students attended their homeroom lectures after this official news was made known to them. They were desperate to either convert their extals into MERPs or look through job postings suitable for them. There were plenty of jobs available for first-year students ranging from being a helper in various labs to serving as an apprentice chef in the LA's kitchens spread across various places on the academy grounds. Some academic departments like the Department of Sanitization didn't seem to have upper limits in the numbers of applicants they accepted. That meant anyone could become a part of the cleaning crew. So the students were spoiled for choices. It's just that the amount of MERPs their jobs paid them was lesser than they had expected. LA cashed it on students' desperation to get more MERPs and employed them as cheap labor. The evening arrived and raised the levels of anticipation in the minds of many novice rankers. The auction event was about to start. Authors note I witnessed some readers getting confused about the usability of LA's auction event when it was first mentioned. I had depicted at that time that it was going to cater to students' welfare and the academy's fiscal interests simultaneously, which might have created an ambiguity in some readers' minds. Hope this chapter puts all their queries to rest. Chapter 84, Sedated Perception. A student from 1/A has raised the price for the Book of Indra's Levin again. 7,000 MERPs going once. 7,000 MERPs going twice. Sev. Oh. There's another prompt on the screen sent by a student from 1/C, raising the amount for this item to 7,500 MERPs. Is there anyone else who wants to raise the amount any further? The technique is not available in the novice treasury, you know. Just to make it clear to the newbie students. Even an amount of 10k MERPs wouldn't be deemed expensive for a 5-star ranking technique. Still no takers. 7,500 MERPs going once. 7,500 MERPs going twice. And blaring beep sound and the removal of the entry named Indra's Levin from the list of ranking techniques displayed on the hall's huge spectral screen. 7,500 MERPs going thrice. Congratulations to the 1/C student named Aaron Idril for getting this 5-star lightning element ranking technique. It is made for close combat style. You will receive the book at the end of the auction event after signing a binding contract. Jamie Lancaster congratulated Aaron as a formality before taking a sip out of the small vial that he had seemingly retrieved from nowhere. He resumed his stoic face after the sip and restarted the bidding process for the next ranking technique in the list. The auction event was being held at the large hall named Novice Inspience. Jamie was standing on a large, raised platform. There was a huge spectral screen placed in front of him that listed the current items for auctioning. A group of first-year students was standing below the platform. The students' eyes fixated on the spectral screen. There were 5 other professors like Jamie catering to their respective groups of first-year students. These novice rankers were divided into 6 groups according to their elements. The first 5 groups were dedicated to students with 5 great elements respectively. And the 6th group was dedicated to the entire lot of students who had derived elements. Aaron was part of the 6th group. The group's auction was hosted by none other than Jamie Lancaster. The same person Aaron had seen in the Ozone Woods. The students interested in the bidding item only needed to send the prompt of the raised amount through their personal spectral screens to make their bid. They would get the item if no other student is challenging their amount with another raise. Aaron was excited about a 5-star ranking technique. He never got to practice a technique like this in the previous timeline. It had burned a hole through his MERP's reserves. But he thought it was worth it. But this was not the end of the auction event. First, Jamie would auction all the ranking techniques made for various derived elements. The auction for spells, potions, and artifacts would follow soon after. The auction event kept on progressing as it was scheduled. Aaron soon obtained a few more novice-leveled spells for himself. He had obtained the higher star variants of all the lightning element spells he was used to with. The butcher also bought an F-rank mana gathering array layout. Plus, there were 2 new additions to his list of spells now. The total cost of the ranking technique, array layout, and spells had almost emptied the butcher's reserves. Now he only had around 700 MERPs remaining in his account. But his battle prowess had received an unprecedented boost as a result. Even with its speedy execution due to the inclusion of a spectral screen, the auction went on for a few hours. Aaron met up with his party members after the auction got over. The members kept on conveying their thanks to Aaron, who just nodded at them as a response. Even a low-key haughty girl like Becky thanked him for his suggestion and heads up to gather more MERPs a few days back. She had decided to follow Aaron's advice and chose a mage class ranking technique for herself in the auction along with the spells related to it. Jake, Becky, and Steve had avoided falling prey to LA's debt trap, thanks to Aaron's warnings. Now they had more time for themselves to focus on their studies due to not having to accept any binding employment contract. Of course, they would choose to enter employment later on when the binding contract became more student-friendly in a few days. They had to. Because they had ended up using the advance on their default monthly allowance. Therefore, their accounts wouldn't get credited with 1k MERPs for around 6 months. That meant the trio was going to be MERPs broke for those many months until it decided to do something about it. Now Jake, Becky, and Steve needed a stable source of income. They couldn't become the members of Bizank like Aaron due to their BTP values not hitting the mark of 14. And they had already overdrawn on the support offered by their families. So the employment at the academy was the only way for them to curb their need for MERPs. Aaron gave them a few pointers regarding their jobs postings. He told them to join specific jobs as per their respective classes so that they could also practice and enhance their class-related skills on site. The butcher mainly did that so that their job timings would sync and they could all be available at the same time while ensuring that their class-related skills are nurtured. The group was about to head to the pantry to have their dinner when it heard a voice coming from behind. "Little Idril, wait up." Aaron and his party members turned 180 in unison only to observe that Adapt Marla was making her way towards them from a distance. Aaron understood the reason for her calling, so he told his group to go ahead to the pantry, saying that he'd join them afterwards. The group left and Marla caught up with him soon afterwards. "Adapt Marla, what do I owe this pleasure?" Aaron asked while performing a slight bow. Marla was all smiles when replying. "Hee. You are wise, Idril boy, I must give you that. You addressed me formally again after meeting for the 2nd time. You didn't abuse the freedom I gave you. These little subtleties are all signs of you being on the right path as a ranker. I came to say my thanks. You know, your tip would help me and my panel well tonight. The auction for ace rankers will start now that the novice auction has ended. And the auction for adapt rankers will take place at midnight. We have loaded our accounts with MERPs and expect a great haul from it." See, my information came through. And you were doubting me then. Hee. That was only natural. But I won't go back on my words. I'll give you something worth your information in a few days. And I'll come to see your performance in intra-class battles. If you can perform well, I'll consider taking you as my apprentice despite your low BTP value. By the way, which technique did you obtain? I convey my sincere thanks, Adapt Marla. I got my hands on 5-star Indra's Levin for 7,500 MERPs. Oh. A 5-star technique in LA is extremely rare. And you even got it for peanuts worth considering its actual value. Indra's Levin, huh? So you are serious about becoming a close combat expert? Good. Make sure you kick some serious ass in the intra-class battles. The close combat experts are known for their boldness to enter their opponent's attacking range and beat them up head-on. I need to see the fierceness in you that is needed for this class to take you as my apprentice. I understand. Thanks for telling me what you want to see in my battles. I will make sure to quote-unquote kick ass in my battles. By the way, did you set the base price for the E-rank mana blessing you found? Oh. I set the base price at 10k merbs. But I'm hoping it'll cross the limit of 20k when the final bid amount is set. Hee. Aaron smirked at Marla while replying to her. She realized this little devil already knew about the stone's worth even after still being a novice ranker. She was excited to see the boy's performance now. She'd rather take a smart student as her apprentice rather than teach to some gullible fool. Aaron could be seen inside his dorm room now. He had imbued his mana into the mana gathering array layout he bought from the auction and laid it inside his dorm room. It was an array with a pentastar layout. Aaron then used all of his F-rank mana blessings that he had collected from the Ozan Woods and planted them at the 5 distinct points over the array. The butcher experienced an unprecedented level of mana purity of F-rank gathering inside his dorm room now. With this array, Aaron will be able to expedite his ranking journey in the F-rank much faster than his previous estimations. But Aaron's attention was soon drawn to a particular spell scroll in his hand. He was most interested in this spell because he had never experienced the effects of this spell in his previous timeline. The spell's name was Sedated Perception. It was a 4-star F-rank spell belonging to the time element. Chapter 85, The Real State of Epiphany. This was the same spell Linda had in her arsenal. Of course, hers was an E-rank one. Sedated Perception was one of the most common spells among the time element rankers. And also one of the most hated ones at that. Because it largely contributed to the time element rankers having to go through frequent bouts of uncalled for time dilation. Of course, Aaron was worried about the side effects of using the spell as well. But he thought he should give it a try since his time element affinity would at least get utilized this way. The self-casting spell's effect was simple. It affected the user's perception of time. When the spell activates, the user would experience a slow passage of time around him. Some experts argued that Sedated Perception was not a complete time element spell. They believed that a complete time element spell would allow the user to interact normally with the slow passage of time without affecting their movements. That meant time would indeed slow down around the user when they cast a complete time element spell, but the spell would make it so that the user won't slow down with the time. Of course, low-level rankers weren't privy to the authenticity of these claims. And getting used to Sedated Perception was hard enough. Low-level rankers would feel satisfied after completely mastering the spell without facing its side effects. Aaron was thinking along the same lines. He wasn't experienced in using time element spells. Therefore he deemed that he should focus on what's currently on his platter. Aaron put the spell scroll away. The spell won't be useful in his upcoming battle. He started reading the book and storing the contents on his virtual content storage with the help of the spectral screen. Aaron didn't like that LA was so prudent in sharing the technique in an old-fashioned way. He had paid a hefty in merbs. The least the Academy could do was upload the technique directly on his ID stone. He would have been spared of manually storing the content. It took him a few hours to understand the initial concepts of the technique while storing the content on his ID stone. Now he could access the content anytime with his spectral screen. Aaron only slept after reading the book completely. He needed to start practicing his ranking technique. The initial stage section covered in the technique was simple to follow and had a few things in common with the lightning element technique he had practiced in his previous life. That's why Aaron could start practicing the technique as soon as he woke up the next day. He was going to practice the technique till evening. And then, he'd go through the spell scrolls of his improved spells. Most of the students would also skip on their lectures like Aaron. They needed to do last-minute preparations for the upcoming battles, after all. The night before the intra-class ranking war, Aaron was done with reading through the spell scrolls of his improved spells. There were subtle differences between the 3-star and 4-star variants. The 4-star variants were more refined versions of their respective lower-star counterparts. They contained a more efficient execution of mana points activation, allowing in better, faster spell deployment while keeping the mana consumption lower. That's why it was crucial to have higher-star spells. The rankers would find that their battle prowess shoot up just by making use of higher-star variants of their spells. And since these spells were almost identical to their lower-star counterparts except for changes in the algorithm of mana point activation, they could be adopted quickly. At least the spells in F rank were quicker to adopt among their multi-star variations. That's why Aaron took till afternoon to practice his ranking technique and get used to it. He used the remaining hours to fine-tune his usual spells to their higher-star variants. It was 2 a.m. Aaron thought of calling it quits. He had finished his preparations and was ready to go through the ranking battle. But before he did that, the butcher thought of taking a quick look at the Sedated Perception. He knew that he couldn't learn the spell in whatever remaining time he had before the ranking war. But he just couldn't calm his curiosity about the spell. Aaron opened the spell and started recording its content. Then he memorized the mana points activation algorithm of the spell and closed his eyes to recall it again. The algorithm was nothing too complicated. Aaron had been a D-rank berserker in his past timelines. He was used to executing spells with higher complications than mere F-rank spells. Compared to those spells, this F-rank time element spell was no biggie on paper. But the real difficulty of spells lies in the ranker maintaining its effect without injuring themselves in the process. That's why it was near impossible for Aaron to use the spell in the battle tomorrow. Something magical happened when Aaron tried to execute his first time element spell. He experienced the most elusive event in a ranker's life. Aaron was pulled into a state of epiphany as soon as he tried to execute sedated perception. It was like the spell itself was communicating with him, telling him how it should be better executed. Aaron felt like he was experiencing the passage of time quite differently in this state. He was aware of the things unfolding around him while his psyche communicated non-verbally with the higher consciousness brought about by the state of epiphany. The butcher cut off his communication with the rest of the world and focused on absorbing what he could from being connected to the higher consciousness. He didn't know if and when he'd get to experience the state of epiphany again. He had to make the best use of what was happening to him at the time. Aaron also subconsciously activated his ranking technique while he was understanding the concepts behind sedated perception. What he had failed to realize was that due to the active spells and state of epiphany's effect, his ranking technique had started working on hyperdrive. There were tiny tongues of lightning dancing on his skin all over the body due to the ranking technique's activation. The lightning was harmless to him. It was just a manifestation of unelementalized mana in the surrounding getting converted into the lightning element mana under the technique's effect. Aaron learned everything about the spell in that blurred state of self-consciousness. He now knew there was a better way to execute sedated perception than what was recorded in the 4-star spell scroll. He now knew what part of the algorithm needed to be changed or tweaked to make the spell easy to use for him while increasing its effect. When Aaron opened his eyes, he thought the morning must have arrived. He thought he had spent at least 5 to 6 hours in that state. But soon he was left flabbergasted. That's because when he checked his clock, it told him only about 20 minutes had passed in reality. The butcher couldn't help thinking to himself. Was sedated perception active the whole time I was in the state of epiphany? But how can it be? At my current level, it should be impossible to maintain the spell active for this long a time. Even if I could, the ratio of the time dilation just doesn't make sense. My mana reserves are empty now. But how did I manage to keep the spell active for 20 minutes straight without overdrawing on my mana core and damaging it in the process? I learned sedated perception in mere 20 minutes. Even if we consider that it is an F-rank spell that uses only a primary mana circuit, the achievement to learn the spell from scratch and execute it flawlessly is something unthinkable for a guy like me who wasn't even a ranker a month back. But most of all, I have progressed further in my rank in just about a day after I started practicing the technique. My BTP value has shot up. If the word about my gains gets out, it'll create a sensation in LA. There are many mysteries about this whole event. Even a mysterious occurrence like the state of epiphany cannot take all the credit this time. All things point in only one direction. The swallowed gem. Aaron came to that conclusion and caressed his lower abdomen with his hand. Of course, there was no gem to be found or touched. But the butcher felt that it was making its presence known by creating small miracles like tonight's event. Aaron had an inkling that even the state of epiphany was brought about by the gem itself when it detected that he was learning a time element spell. Maybe this wasn't a natural state of epiphany but something that was initiated by the gem. Aaron had more questions than answers at this point. But the fact that the gem had helped him learn the time element spell effortlessly was undeniable. It had also aided in him progressing further in the ranking journey. With benefits lying in front of him, Aaron's greed for getting more power for himself resurfaced. The butcher thought that maybe he should have gone with the time element ranking technique in the F rank itself. The gem could have helped him breeze through the rank at a faster pace. But then he controlled his greed. The butcher concluded that he still didn't know anything about the gem, so it'd be unwise to base his entire ranking journey around it. And fast doesn't always mean better. It was in his favor that he progressed steadily in the most foundational rank. The state of epiphany was known for producing a lot of wonders for rankers without harming them. But he couldn't just enter the state on his whims. Therefore Aaron came to a sound decision. What he had now was sufficient for now. He needed to cultivate his current advantages before taking a completely different path. Then his thought process made him wonder about the reason behind his current situation. Aaron wondered if the gem was a sage rank artifact. The S-rank entities were officially given the prefix of sages. The items belonging to that rank also had the word sage as their prefix. Therefore, the S-rank artifacts were known as sage artifacts. It was the peak of the ranking journey Aaron was made aware of. He had seen only one A-rank artifact in his whole life, even in the previous timeline. And that was the flying platform LA had used to transport its students. After that, he never got to witness the true prowess of a Grandmaster artifact as ever. So Aaron had never thought about the sage artifacts in both of his timelines. He wasn't even sure what people and items at that level could do. That subject was more of a distant dream for him. But what if this gem was an S rank? Or, what if the gem was even ranked higher than a sage artifact? Is there even a rank higher than S rank for rankers, potions, spells, and artifacts? As it was said previously, Aaron had more questions than answers. So he decided to stop thinking about them altogether. What was important now was the fact that Aaron could use the sedated perception tomorrow in the ranking war. It had now become a test field for him to field test his new and improved overnight time element spell. The Butcher was looking forward to tomorrow's match. Chapter 86, Becky's Banter. Ranking battles were a huge chance for Aaron to get used to his custom-made time element spell. The state of epiphany had made him alter the sequencing of the spell's mana points. The changed algorithm had basically made it deviate from the original sedated perception, cross the boundaries of a 4-star variant, and the rate itself as the sole 5-star spell that didn't have any lower star counterparts. The 5-star spells were special in a way that they couldn't be executed by everybody effectively. Only certain people who were in sync in both body and mind with the creator of the spell could execute the said spell with its 5-star alteration effectively. When a ranker who is not the creator of the spell gets their hands on a 5-star variant of it, they would always fail short of bringing forth its true prowess demonstrated by the original creator. The difference of power and efficiency between a higher star and lower star variants of the spells only increased with the rank. That's why it got rarer to find higher star variants of the spell the higher you climb the ranking ladder. The ranking techniques and spells were almost always element bound. That meant almost all of them were related to their respective element. The potions and artifacts on the other hand were made so that they could be used by all the rankers belonging to the said potion or artifact's rank. Of course, there were exceptions in the cases mentioned above, but they were rare and seldom used by the low-level rankers. Furthermore, the inherent nature and mana signature of the ranker also affected the spell's execution and end result. It was hard to find two rankers with the same element and inherent nature within their generation. And if mana signature was to be considered, it was impossible to find the matches even if samples from different generations were to be considered. In short, it was difficult to find a perfectly suitable candidate for a 5-star spell that could adapt to it and display its true power and efficiency. If this compatibility were to be ignored, the top star variant of the spell would be no different than a 4-star counterpart in its power. The result would get worse with the increasing difference in the compatibility. This was also the reason why rankers would seldom go for 5-star techniques or spells. They wouldn't get their money's worth if they were to fail miserably in getting in sync with the said spells or techniques. It was better to take a 3-star or 4-star technique which they knew wouldn't cost as much as the 5-star one while still delivering the intended results because their compatibility requirements weren't as high. This was the reason LA's novice treasury was normally capped off at 4-star variants, that too for a selected number of spells. The auction was the only time the students could get their hands on the 4-star variants of their spells if and when novice treasury gave them the lame excuse of unavailability to provide the same. That's why sedated perception had become a special spell in Aaron's arsenal. He didn't think there'd be someone in LA with a 5-star spell in their repertoire as him. Furthermore, Aaron's spell had been altered by the insight brought about by the state of epiphany. This was an alteration that was custom made for him only. It might not be related to the original 5-star variant of the spell anymore. That meant Aaron wasn't exactly using the original version of the sedated perception. And he doubted that the changed sequencing wasn't universal. The spell was limited to a special time element user like him, made for him, by him. If he were to record the changed sequencing of his altered spell on a spell scroll and give it to some other time element user, they might not be able to execute it at all. The spell was going to be Aaron's biggest trump card at the time of the pinch in the upcoming future. The morning heralded the creation of bubbling excitement and uncalmable anxiety among the minds of LA's first years. Aaron woke up and practiced his ranking technique before getting ready to leave his dorm room with Jake. The duo met up with Steve and Becky before heading to novice incipients. The intra-class ranking war was going to take place at that venue. "There's something changed about you," Becky commented at Aaron when they were walking towards the venue. The latter just shrugged his shoulders and replied, "We were all someone else yesterday. And we will be someone else tomorrow." The Butcher casually replied with a philosophical sentence. "Don't try to play dumb, Aaron. My element and inherent nature let me feel the warmth of one's aura. And yours has just turned colder for some reason. What did you do? Who knows? It might be related to my current ranking technique that I started practicing? Or a spell maybe. I don't know. Life is ever-changing, Becky. So it's only natural that the living follows in its footsteps. More importantly, you guys, how many spells did you learn and how many can you use actually in the battle?" Aaron diverted Becky's interrogation with his bullshittery. He really didn't know what Becky was talking about. But he was just made aware that Becky's element and inherent nature had granted her a peculiar sense. He didn't want to risk her finding more about himself by continuing the topic. His question was answered by Jake quickly after. Most of my time during these 2 days was spent learning and practicing my ranking technique. I could only learn a defense-related spell called Uyami Kilakia. It absorbs moisture from the atmosphere and creates a water shield in front of me. The spell can be remotely moved and adjusted in its size and shape with my mana sense. So thankfully, it can be used for both offense and defense. But I'm not sure about its execution. I just didn't have enough time to practice it. What about you, Steve? Well, my technique was straightforward like most earth element techniques are. So I didn't have to struggle as much as you, Jake. But learning about the spell was tough for me. I just barely succeeded in executing the spell by staying up all night. My spell Yemaduri Medif lets me coat my fists with earth elemental mana, enabling me to have serious punching power. But the mana conversion to earth element takes time as I'm not proficient in it. I couldn't learn a defensive skill in such a short time. So, I'll be a sitting duck till the only offensive spell in my repertoire takes effect. Steve finished his report about his progress on a disappointing note. He looked at Becky next, nudging her to share her current state. I'm on the same boat as you guys. I have 2 spells, 1 offense and 1 defense. But I'm not sure about executing either of them the way I want. This ranking war is such a sham. It didn't give students enough time to prepare. It's like LA wants its students to go into ranking wars with shallow preparedness. Becky seemed frustrated at her progress. She thought LA had set most students up by declaring ranking wars this early in their first academic year. The butcher couldn't agree more. You are not wrong in saying that. LA set up the ranking war right after the auction event so that students would be desperate enough to buy techniques and spells for themselves. But it also benefits the students, you see. They get to know if their technique or spells were suitable for them or not right from the get-go. Controlled battles are the most efficient way to figure things like these. Alright, Mr. Know-It-All. Tell us about your progress. And speak honestly. Don't play with words like you are used to doing. Becky looked at Aaron with her inspective gaze and the latter could only laugh mirthlessly at her bantering. About my progress. Chapter 87, Spell Combo. About my progress. I have practiced a movement spell and an offensive spell. My techniques and spells weren't too difficult and their executions weren't too complicated. So it was easy for me to learn them. I'm confident about my offensive power. But the movement spell causes tunnel vision as it is too fast for my eyes. So let's see how I perform when I implement the spell in the battles today. Aaron mixed a portion of truth in his lies. That made his bullshittery more believable to his group. They discussed some more before expediting their way towards the battle venue. Lynn greeted the class of 1/C as their homeroom professor. Good morning first-year students. Your intra-class battles will start from today. Today will be the minimum requirement matches that LA will randomly set for all of you. There are 5 battle rings set for the class of 1/C, meaning 5 battles can take place simultaneously for the class. I have a spectral screen in front of me that you all can see. Nobody has submitted the names of their parties, so intra-class wars would all be individual based. This screen will randomly show the names of any 2 opponents and assign them their respective unoccupied battle rings. The students can either choose to go through with the match or call quits before participating. A part of merit points will be deducted from their reserve as a penalty for their non-participation in the compulsory matches. I'd suggest you take part in the matches even if you know you are going to lose. The penalty for a battle loss is more affordable than a penalty for non-participation. So let's get this thing going already, shall we? Aaron heard Lynn's speech and remembered the first time he saw the beginning of the intra-class ranking war in his previous timeline. He was a non-ranker back then. He had lost pathetically by a non-ranker like him. But this time, Aaron would ensure that the ranking wars become the biggest beneficiary for him. He looked at his base stats to see his progress. Organization Lionheart's Adventurers Academy. Academic status Class 1/C. Rank status unranked. Merit points 22,725. Battle points 0. HP 3.8/3.8. MP 5.1/5.1. STR 2.3. AGI 3.3. Int 3. BTP 17. BTP Visibility Private. Ranking Technique 5-star, Lightning Element, Indra's Levin. F rank spells. LE, 4-star, Movement Type, Blitz Steps. LE, 4-star, Defense Type, Blitz Shield. LE, 4-star, Attack Type, Blitz Bolt. LE, 4-star, Area of Effect, Blitz Storm. LE, 4-star, Healing Type, Blitz Heal. TE, 4-star, Miscellaneous, Sedated Perception. Aaron first observed the number of merit points he had accumulated. His E-rank mana blessing had been sold for a fortune from his perspective. It had basically retrieved all the merps he had lost in the bidding while adding the extra amount on top. Then Aaron looked at his base stat values. He had observed that his agility had gotten the biggest boost, followed by his mana points and intelligence. The focus on particular body stat segments was due to the type of ranking technique he was practicing currently. Each ranking technique focused on a particular set of base stat values depending upon its type. Since the technique was focused on close combat style, it would prioritize the ranker's agility, mana points, and intelligence over other values. Had Aaron been practicing a berserker technique in the past, it would have focused on raising his HP the most, followed by STR. Apart from raising a particular set of base stat values, a technique would also shape a mana circuit in such a way that it would suit the profession that is focused on. The primary mana circuit within the ranker's body would start to expand itself in a way that would allow them to exert their maximum potential for the field their technique was based on. That's why it became unavoidable to regress in the rank when the rankers wanted to change their path midway. They needed to turn the profession-specific mana circuit they had built within their bodies into a primary mana circuit before restarting their ranking journey. It entailed the necessity to destruct the existing mana circuit before a ranker can restart their path successfully. Destroying the mana circuit wasn't a pleasant process. Plus, it meant flushing the hard work one had out into it down the drain. Hence the rankers would think twice or thrice before changing their path. Aaron was weak in agility even in his previous timeline. But this time, thanks to the 5-star ranking technique, his agility had been optimized for his profession. The fine-tuning of base stats and construction of profession-specific mana circuits highlighted the importance of choosing the right technique for oneself. Aaron knew that his ranking technique would keep on prioritizing AGI and int the further he progressed further in his ranking journey as close combat professional. Aaron's spells also received a boost. They were now all 4-star spells. But these variants had been revamped from their original creations by a high-ranking entity, especially for close combat experts. Hence the change in their names. Aaron now had a healing-type spell in his element as well. Blitz Heal would generate a lightning field around the body's damaged area and expedite the body's normal healing prowess to supernatural levels using mana as a catalyst. Lightning wasn't known for its healing properties. So the spell had a lot of restrictions compared to the original healing spells used by healers. First, Blitz Heal was very taxing in mana consumption. So it wasn't ideal for consistent use. Second, Aaron needed to stay still to form a stable lightning field. So it couldn't be used during battles or while moving. Aaron also noted in the spectral screen that there was a calibration error for sedated perception. It was mostly since Aaron's spell had differed from the original. Aaron Idril. What are you spacing out for? Your name is on display. Get into ring number 4 already. Aaron was soon pulled out from his thoughts by Lynn's shout. He looked at the spectral screen and saw that his name was on the display. Battle Ring 4, Aaron Idril vs Brian Grimaldi. Aaron walked towards Battle Ring number 4. He could see a teen boy taller than him walking beside him. He had to be Brian since his destination was the same. Hey, little guy. I'd suggest you quit soon after our match starts. Otherwise, I won't be held responsible for your injuries. Brian announced as soon as he stepped into the ring. Aaron could feel that it was done less for him and more for the audience currently watching them. He chose to keep quiet. The guy had a BTP of 13, which gave him the confidence to beat any seeming newbie ranker. He only waited for the countdown currently getting displayed on the spectral screen to get over. 3, 2, 1, 0. Start. Little guy, brace. Brian activated his Fire Fist spell as soon as the countdown was over. His fists were first coated in colorless mana before catching fire. He was about to approach his opponent. But alas, Aaron was nowhere to be found. He had almost vanished into thin air after the countdown hit 0. Brian felt warning signs coming from his back. He turned 180 to tackle any incoming attack. He quickly swung his fist behind his back to discourage Aaron from attacking him from his blind spot. Brian's instincts were on point. His blazing fist driven by his instincts had almost made contact with Aaron's face. But before the fist landed, Brian felt a sharp pain coming from his ass. Aaron couldn't wait to execute sedated perception and blitz steps at the same time. He had done exactly that the moment after the match officially kicked off. Blitz steps was activated first. He quickly executed it to go behind his opponent. The speed was blinding even for Aaron, so he guessed Brian wouldn't be able to follow him with his eyes alone. But Aaron soon found out that the guy could handle himself well in a battle. That's because he had turned quickly and was soon about to intercept his attack. Aaron's tunneling vision due to the blitz steps had him blinded for a short while. That short span was enough for his opponent to launch a counterattack. Brian's blazing fist was soon going to land. But then, sedated perception was activated. And everything around Aaron slowed down to an almost halting degree. He could see Brian's blazing fist was almost stopped in front of his face, just a few inches away from the tip of his nose. It was close enough for Aaron to feel the heat radiated from that fist. But the incoming fist attack had gotten so slow that it almost looked like Brian was maintaining a steady pose for a live painting. Aaron too felt his body was immersed in water. His body had gotten as slow as Brian. But then he executed blitz steps again and got the movement he needed to dodge the attack. Aaron kept sedated perception active while he traversed quickly through the almost stagnant world. Aaron could now launch a frontal attack on Brian with the stacked advantage offered by his trump spells. But he chose to work extra to test his spell combo. Aaron had consciously controlled the effects of blitz steps to lessen the drawbacks of tunneling vision. It meant he couldn't execute the movement spell to its fullest potential during the battles. But that all changed when sedated perception got activated. Aaron felt that he could finally let go of his restraints in executing his blitz steps. The butcher's feet were coated in lightning again in that slow MO world. He used his extreme speed and got behind Brian. This time, Aaron had moved so fast in real life that even Brian's instincts and mana sense couldn't follow him on time. Aaron kicked Brian's ass with his lightning-coated feet as soon as he found an opening. His movement spell had enabled him to have a serious kicking force. And the same force showed its effect soon after. In a normal, non-stagnant world, Brian felt a sudden sharp pain coming from his ass as soon as his opponents vanished in front of him. How can this little guy be so fast? Brian had this thought before his body was lifted into the air. Brian soon found himself getting launched towards the edge of the battle ring where the dome-shaped force field was active. Brian's body struck hard onto the force field. He stayed at the position of impact for a while before the gravity pulled him downwards. He didn't get up from that impact because he had already lost consciousness. Hardly a few seconds had passed since Aaron's match with Brian began. And nobody could believe it was already over. All most of the students could see was Aaron sporadically disappearing from the field and appearing behind Brian. Then Brian gets launched onto the force field, flat on his face. Aaron stopped his spell combo after his kick landed on Brian. He wasn't looking at the opponent he had just beaten though. The butcher's eyes were searching for a specific person in the crowd. They soon found their target. Marla was looking at him from a distance with a smile plastered on her face. She nodded at him as soon as their eyes met. I'm going to do exactly what you asked me to do, kicking ass. Aaron's body language and his cunning smile conveyed his feelings to Marla. Chapter 88, Renita Diabrio. The duel in Battle Ring 4 is over. Aaron Idril wins. Only after Lynn's voice confirmed the duel's result did the students standing around Battle Ring 4 come out of their shock states. They looked at the unimpressive-looking kid with a range of emotions in their eyes. Aaron, you did well. Blitz steps, is it? I see that you've gotten a good handle on your movement spell. Your minimum requirement for intra-class ranking war is met. Do you still want to continue? Aaron was shocked for a short while before nodding his head to express his wish for more battles. Shocked because Lynn didn't recognize that he had used sedated perception as well with Blitz spell. A spell execution creates a certain fluctuation in the surroundings even if its effects aren't visible. The ranker's aura also changes according to their active spell execution. The fact that Lynn didn't notice these changes either meant Lynn was incompetent in recognizing the time element spell execution, or the spell was covered due to its intrinsic nature or some artifacts. Aaron felt that it was both. He had changed the default algorithm of sedated perception under the effects of the state of epiphany. And he was also in the possession of his gem, which might have masked the time element spell's effect. Either way, there was no way for Lynn to know that Aaron had actually used a spell combo in his battle. He chose not to correct his homeroom professor at all. Aaron's name was placed on the spectral screen again. Now the screen would randomly match him up with another student who has consented to battle again, either after winning or losing their first battle. The names were getting randomly matched on the spectral screen after a while. Soon, Aaron's next opponent was revealed. Coincidentally, his next opponent was Renita Diabrio, the ranger his team was aiming to recruit. Hello. Name's Renita. Renita expressed herself casually to Aaron who did the same in response. Hello. I'm Aaron. Do you mind if we raise the betting amount from 100 to 1000 merps? Are you that confident in beating me? I had observed your match during my idle time. I accept that you are fast. And your perception lets you handle yourself better in close combat. But unfortunately, I'm a worse match for you. What can you do if I don't let you near me and attack you from a distance? Renita smiled at Aaron after saying that. She was confident in her ranger skills, after all. That's why she didn't take offense at what seemed like an underestimation from Aaron's side. I know that my close combat abilities are restricted when faced against a long-range combatant. Usually, I'd need someone from my party to pin you down before I approach you. But our solo battle right now tilts the advantage in your favor. But that's exactly why I want to raise the stakes. If I can surpass my class's restrictions during this battle, I'd be able to better familiarize myself with my combat style. And second. Aaron smiled and looked at Renchia while narrowing his eyes. The latter could feel a silently threatening aura coming from her opponent. Her smile vanished as a result. She replied with a stoic face. Second reason for me raising the stakes is that you can take this battle seriously from the get-go. I don't want you to find an excuse that you weren't prepared to get away from the criticism, if and when you lose this duel. Such bravado after winning a single match against a newbie berserker. Tell me Aaron Idril, what would you give me apart from those 1k merps if I win this duel? I'd give you an F-rank artifact that's not much use to me if you were to win this. But Renita, this thing about additional benefits can't be a one-way street, you know. I don't have any good artifact for your class. I can pay you in. Who said anything about paying in merps and artifacts? I want you to join my party if I were to win this. Do you agree? You want to recruit me? But you don't even know the first thing about me. And we've never interacted. What made you place a bet like this? I have my reasons. My party needs a good ranger and you are it. We can discuss this topic later on. Right now what's important is whether or not you agree to join us after losing this duel. Aaron said that and sent a private audio communication request to Renita. The latter knew he was going to talk about something private, so she accepted his request. A private audio channel was opened between the two opponents as a result. By the way, Steve Austin, who gave you the hint about a certain event, is from my team. You said that you'd think about accepting his offer if his information pans out. I know that you must have gotten the items you wanted from the auction event. Therefore, you owe us one, don't you, Miss Diabrio? There's nothing wrong in accepting an additional bet if you think about the agreement we had. Renita's eyes were opened wide as a result. Only now did she understand how serious Aaron was in recruiting her. He had already invested in her by providing her with the information about the auction event in advance. And he was out to collect his debt now. This battle was just a coincidence. Aaron would have approached Renita anyway if this duel didn't take place between them. Sigh. You are a mysterious man, Aaron Idril. Frankly, I had other plans. I was going to pay Steve with merps for his information instead of joining his party. But that seems out of option from listening to your talk. Alright. I'll join your party if you were to beat me. Renita finally agreed. Both gave a nod to their homeroom teacher after their private conversation was over. Lynn started the counter in response. 3, 2, 1, 0. Chapter 89, 3 Spell Combo. Renita started going backwards from her position while activating her offensive spell. Aaron aimed to do the opposite of that. He spearheaded his assault with the best combo spell he had in his arsenal. Blitz Steps and Sedated Perception worked their magic, and the Butcher managed to shorten his distance from his opponent by a large degree. He was just about 10 meters away from her. A moment was enough for him to cover that distance. But then Renita's offensive spell got activated. She created a mana rifle out of thin air and sprayed a round of wind bullets at her upcoming opponent. That's right. Renita's elemental affinity was wind and her inherent nature was precision. The class of a ranger was an apt choice for her. Aaron saw that the wind bullets could tear through the effects of his sedated perception and catch him off guard if he didn't dodge them in time. Renita aimed her shots with pinpoint precision. It covered her front and forced the Butcher to defend himself while being forced to turn back. Aaron had to divert from his frontal assault to dodge the incoming wind bullets. He retreated and tried to approach the ranger from a different angle. But Renita was ready for him even from that angle. She had the convenience of her long-range capabilities. Her offense also doubled up as a defense. Sedated perception was only used as a means for Aaron to dodge the wind bullets. He had to think about another way to get close to Renita. The girl was skilled enough in her tactics. She kept on changing her position while maintaining a safe distance from him. That's why the ranger class was difficult to deal with for close combat experts. The former wouldn't ever let the latter come close to themselves for the close combat experts to show their skills. Renita's battle tactics were the biggest obstacle the current Aaron faced so far. Aaron couldn't keep more than 2 spells active at the same time. This was his current body's limit. He needed to come up with a different spell combo to break the stalemate. Otherwise, he would soon run out of mana and Renita would win by default. Aaron deactivated Sedated Perception and tried to activate Blitz Shield. The spell would create a defensive lightning layer around him for a few seconds, protecting him from any incoming harm. But like Blitz Heal, this defense-type spell wasn't suited to be used while moving. It would show flaws if the ranker didn't maintain a steady layer around him by staying still. But Aaron was ready to face a little backlash. The spell took its time to get activated. So Aaron maintained a safe distance from Renita, who was equally happy to do the same while taking pleasure in tormenting the latter with her long-range offensive. By now Aaron had been hit with a lot of stray wind bullets. His sedated perception wasn't active. So he didn't have the means to dodge all the bullets. The bullet impacts would hinder his movements and create bloody spots on his skin. Renita was an excellent marksman for her age. She made sure not to target the Butcher's vital spot too much, lest she gets penalized for doing the same. Aaron's Blitz Shield was finally activated. His entire body was soon wrapped up in blue lightning that made him look like a non-human being. He didn't waste time and made use of blitz steps to quickly cover the distance that had been widened to a sufficient level now. Aaron tried his best to avoid the incoming wind bullets. The bullets that managed to breach his perception hit the layer of lightning created by his defensive spell. The spell couldn't negate the impact entirely due to being executed while moving. It did however manage to reduce the penetration power of the bullets, making them less threatening than they were. Renita was caught in a dilemma. She was using a movement type skill along with her mana rifle spell. So she couldn't execute the third spell either. She had been shocked by Aaron many times during this battle. The best combo spell that had worked for her so far wasn't all that effective against Aaron. The guy would easily dodge most of her precision-driven bullets like it was a child's play for him. His movement spell gave her even more of a headache. Her class should have let her prevail against a close combat expert dominantly. But Aaron was fighting like he didn't need a party to prevail against a ranger. Renita was less speedy than Aaron, but the difference wasn't that big. Her movement spell had enhanced her elemental affinities advantage. She managed to maintain a safe distance against Aaron, who tried his best to close the distance. But she knew that it won't be long before he catches up to her and that it'd be game over for him. Renita was a smart girl. She could see Aaron had changed his style of approach. So she intended to do the same. She decided to answer Aaron's fearless, self-harming offensive with the strongest spell in her arsenal now. Renita let go of her mana rifle spell. The semi-transparent assault rifle was soon dispersed into the air it was made of. She spread her hands and soon loads of wind shurikens were materialized around her. They were spinning at crazy speeds and were floating in masses around her. Renita was almost out of her mana storage because of this spell. But she found her targets. She willed the wind shurikens to target her opponent while guiding them with her mana sense. If the guy survives through even this spell, she'd have to accept this duel as her loss. Aaron was caught off guard by Renita's change of tactics. He hadn't approached Renita in a straight line to not make it easy for her to target him with her convenient long-range spell. He was shortening the distance between them at a gradual level, thinking Renita would be up against the wall sooner or later. But so many palm-sized wind shurikens were difficult for Aaron to dodge even if he decided to retreat now. Now that the distance had been shortened, it worked against his favor and allowed the wind shurikens to surround him quickly. Aaron thought of stopping blitz steps at that time and focusing on blitz shield and sedated perception. It wouldn't let him remain unharmed through this ordeal, but it would at least let him survive it. But his long experience had taught him that a spell like that would be extremely taxing on the ranger he was battling with. Renita must have depleted her entire mana reserve by executing this spell. So all he needed to do was to survive the incoming spell. He'll be injured all over, but he'd still be able to win. Aaron was aiming for a hard-earned victory that bordered on being Pyrrhic. But the gem had other plans. Aaron soon found himself in an almost stagnant world, which left him confused and shocked at the same time. This was the effect of sedated perception, sure. But the spell hadn't been activated by him. Neither was it depleting the mana from his reserve. It was a completely autonomous spell that had been activated out of the blue. This also meant Aaron could keep 3 spells active at this time. Sigh. This gem is full of surprises. It probably has a consciousness of its own. And I'm not NAVE enough to think that it'd talk to a novice ranker like me. There are so many unanswered questions around it that I feel that I should just stop thinking about them altogether. Let's just completely dominate this battle for now. If I can't win over a mere teen with a 3-spell combo, I might as well quit being a ranker. Chapter 90, Stack Sedated Perception. Let's just completely dominate this battle for now. If I can't win over a mere teen with a 3-spell combo, I might as well quit being a ranker. Aaron said this to himself and quickly came up with a wild plan. He decided to stack the effects of sedated perception in his current situation. He already had an autonomous spell running for him. So it wasn't too difficult for the butcher to execute sedated perception. The miscellaneous spell was soon activated. As he thought, the spell's effects were stacked and the slowly approaching, self-revolving wind shurikens even had their revolution slowed down to a halting degree. Aaron's body was also slowed down and he felt like he had been immersed into an invisible form of jelly. He activated blitz steps to his fullest potential. But that wasn't enough. So he overdrew his mana, sent his mana circuit on a hyperdrive and extracted the very potential of his movement spell. The hyperactive blitz steps finally allowed him to make his way through the storm of shurikens almost unscathed. He had small cuts on various parts of his body due to some shurikens that were clustered so much that he couldn't dodge all of them. But the cuts were shallow and didn't cause him more than a little discomfort. Aaron should have used the 3-spell combo of blitz steps, blitz shield, and autonomous sedated perception. That would have allowed him to protect himself better while approaching Renita head-on. But the butcher wanted to see if the effects of sedated perception could be stacked. He wasn't sure if and when the spell would get automated again by the gem. So this was the best opportunity for him to see the effects of stacked sedated perception. On the other side, Renita witnessed Aaron getting hit by a barrage of her wind shurikens. She immediately regretted her decision to launch her trump AoE on the boy. Maybe I went a little too far, she thought to herself. Aaron was only asking her to be his teammate. There was no need to go to this extreme to prove her superiority, after all. But the ranger's regret soon turned into an absolute shock. That's because she witnessed that what those barrages of wind shurikens pierced wasn't Aaron but only his afterimage. The same scene repeated itself in several places. Aaron's various afterimages would appear on the battlefield. They would get pierced by loads of wind shurikens only to get dispersed into thin air. But soon another afterimage would be seen at a different place, following the same fate. Damn it! This wretched boy was hiding his skills deep. I should have been crueler in my usage of wind shurikens. Now I should. Renita's chain of thoughts was soon cut short. That's because she realized that she was staring right at her opponent's eyes. Their lips were inches away from each other. Her jawline was being gripped by Aaron's one hand. The latter's other hand had executed Blitz Bolt at the tip of the index finger. He directed his index finger close to Renita's neck. The bolt of lightning was just a centimeter away from making contact with her skin. Renita had goosebumps. The skin of her neck was sending a threateningly tingling sensation to her brain. She looked down and found the reason for the same. Aaron's offensive spell was barely keeping itself away from her neck. The moment a ranger lets a close combat expert get close to them is also the moment of their loss. There's just no way they can get away in time before the latter strikes them. I accept defeat. Renita declared loudly. She hesitated to say the word defeat but soon overcame it, thanks to her rationale. This was her only way to get away from this monster. She could read it in Aaron's eyes that he'd not waver or hold back in executing the spell on her just because she was a girl. He'd severely injure and incapacitate her to gain victory anyway. And that was a best-case scenario. Had it been a real battle, she would have been already dead. Aaron only let go of Renita's face after hearing her declaration. He didn't feel even a shred of a hormonal spike by being this close to a beauty like Renita. The reason he had pulled this move to intimidate her was that he was desperate. That's right. Aaron regretted stacking the effects of sedated perception. That's because he was feeling giddy as soon as he stepped out of the spell's effect. He could barely see what's in front of him at the time. The butcher didn't intend to go so close to Renita's face at first. But his depth perception was heavily affected due to the side effect of stacked time element spells. That's why he used his hand to hold Renita's face to get a sense of her proximity. By the time he realized how close he was to her, the latter was already shivering a little. So he decided to stretch his act and executed Blitz Bolt. The entire audience including Lynn's panel had gotten quiet during this time. Aaron's previous performance was already shocking enough for the students of 1/C. But the skill that he had displayed during his match with Renita had left even Lynn's panel of professors dumbfounded. Aaron concluded that sedated perception shouldn't be stacked even if the gem allows him to do so in the future. At least the current him should stay away from doing it in real battles. Otherwise, he'd be vulnerable to attacks befalling him post his spell execution. Aaron was glad he could test the effects during the ranking war. It was the best place for him to experiment with a lot of combos and analyze their advantages and disadvantages with a fresh perspective. He was intended to continue this trend for his next battles as well. But he'd have to stop his battle session today with this fight. It took a while for Lynn to get over the situation. Aaron Idril wins the duel in the battle ring 4. Boy, you've overdrawn on your mana reserve. Your mana circuits have also been affected. I'd suggest you don't continue any further. But I'll ask anyway. What will it be? Sigh. Adapt Lynn, you are right. I think this should be enough for me. Aaron looked at Renita after saying that. His face had gotten pale. And he looked like he'd lose his balance anytime. He started walking towards the hall's exit right after admitting that he won't continue his winning streak. Only after hearing Lynn's speech did Renita understand that it wasn't her that had pushed herself the most in their battle. She looked at her opponent closely to register her moment of defeat deep in her memory. Aaron had small cuts all over his body. His light-colored, slightly torn clothes now had various red spots on them. His body was swaying a little as he walked towards the edge of the battle ring. But at that time, nobody dared to make fun of his situation. The butcher had gotten over the restrictions placed by the inherent difference in class. That was enough to gain everybody's silence. Renita stood at her place and subconsciously admired Aaron's fierceness as she saw his departing figure. Then she remembered how her face was extremely close to his a while ago. Her cheeks immediately flared red as a result. Renita wasn't like most teenage girls. She knew she looked beautiful but didn't try to encash it. Nor did she brag about it to her peers. She maintained a stoic air around her that was also devoid of any arrogance or pride. But she never realized that her fabricated stoicism came from the fact that her beauty was validated by the people surrounding her. What if somebody her age decides to get over her visual appeal and act neutrally to her? Would she still be able to remain aloof in front of him? She found out the answer to that question at this moment. Aaron's behavior had somehow irked Renita. He seemed indifferent even after getting up close and personal with her. The girl started doubting the standards of her beauty she considered herself to fall into because of it. And the reason behind that second guessing also bothered her. Umph. This wretched boy needs to be taught a lesson. I'll clip his wings soon enough. And there would be plenty of chances for me to do so. I'll be in his team after all. The Lady Ranger decided to plan for the future. Chapter 91, Party Meet. Bro. You were just awesome. Winning 2 matches of this caliber shouldn't be underestimated. And the fact that it was only the first day of the ranking war has added to your achievement. Jake couldn't help praising his roommate after their party met up. Unlike Aaron, others in his current party had decided to quit after their first compulsory ranking war. They were all waiting for Aaron to finish up his second match. Aaron had been given first aid by the academy staff after he got out of the battle ring. The caretaker used a simple F-rank potion to close all his wounds and turn them into a bruise. Of course, the potion was diluted so that many students could be treated with it. Otherwise, it would have taken care of the injuries completely. Rankers had supernatural healing ability laying dormant anyway. A night's sleep would be enough for them to get over most normal injuries. And practicing their ranking technique would further expedite that process. So it was natural that LA would cut corners in mass battle events like these. Aaron looked at his party mates as they made their way towards the nearest canteen. They were also looking a little worn down. But nobody looked as beat up like him. What about you guys? Sorry, I couldn't pay attention to your battles. Jackie, at least you must have won, right? Ha ha ha. That's right. It was a little tough but I managed to beat my opponent fair and square. Jake suddenly self-praised himself while stating his battle results. Becky scoffed at Sullivan Jr. as a result. Little difficult, you say? Fatty, you just barely managed to win over a girl because she didn't have a flexible spell like yours. That too after taking so much of her beating. That caretaker had to use twice the amount of healing potion on you than usual to treat you. And you are still trying to brag about your win. Unbelievable. Win is a win. No matter how you do it, against whom you do it. And I'm a firm believer in gender equality. I'm sure Aaron is with me on this as well considering his performance with Renita. Hee. Jake wasn't disheartened by Becky's rebuttal. He was just glad he could win at all. Especially after looking at a certain person in their team. Aaron followed his gaze and soon asked away. Steve, what happened? I lost. Sigh. My worst fear came to haunt me in real life. I couldn't activate the only spell I had on the time. And my opponent was a close combat expert. He saw that I was busy activating my spell and immediately got into an attacking range. I tried to get away from him but my movement spell couldn't overcome the movement spell the guy had. It was a one-sided beating. I had to admit defeat to save myself from the embarrassment of falling unconscious. Steve and his explanation on a sad note. He was sad that he lost. And sadder because he was the only one in their current team that had lost their first match. Oh. Never mind, Stevie. At least you now know the shortcoming of your spell. Becky, you won your match I take it. Umph. Why do you even need to ask? Of course, I won. Although I must admit, my opponent was no pushover. The worst was that she was a mage like me. Our match was dragged longer because of that. Thankfully, I only showed my defensive spell at a crucial time just before launching my counter. That caught her off guard and got her incapacitated. Becky tilted her neck upward saying that she was now more confident in her path as a mage because of this well-earned victory. Contrary to popular belief, she wasn't bragging at all. Her opponent really was a tough nut to crack. It was Becky's presence of mind that had tilted the match in her favor. That's good, Becky. See. I told you, you are better off as a mage than a healer. There will be a day off from ranking war tomorrow. Let's organize a party practice. I might be able to guide you guys in some areas. I'll send a message to Renita. She will join us as well. Aaron concluded their chat and hinted that they should have their fill now. The group was disbanded for the day soon afterwards. Aaron needed a rest. He had sent his mana circuits on hyperdrive to accommodate 2 spells. The very definition of hyperdrive is someone or something delivering more output than they are supposed to. During Aaron's battle with Renita, the execution of primary sedated perception was autonomous and handled by the gem. So he didn't need to worry about that front. But he still needed to execute 2 spells while ensuring their enhanced output to keep up with the stack spell. This overwork had affected his mana circuit. He needed a day's rest to recuperate from it. Using 2 spells simultaneously is called dual casting. And the triple casting is when 3 spells are being executed by a ranker at the same time. If the dual or triple cast involved the execution of the same spell in iteration, then it was called spell stacking. The spell combo involves the usage of the dual or triple casting of any variety and form. Any type of spell combo can put a substantial burden on the novice ranker's primary mana circuit. Because it was not ready yet to sustain the prolonged usage of spell combos. Only a few talented individuals among novice rankers could make use of their respective spell combos effectively while ensuring a consistent execution. And sending your mana circuit into hyperdrive without muscles imploding required even more expertise. It was something a ranker would only be able to develop over time. Aaron was no genius. He too wouldn't have been able to pull this off had he not had his experiences from the previous timeline. That very experience had given him the edge he needed to beat Renita, a genuine genius. Renita was among those talented individuals who would seldom appear in their generation. She was self-aware of her talent as well. That's why she was confident in winning against Aaron. But she would have never thought that a guy her age could manage to send his mana circuits into hyperdrive to defeat her today. That too with the advantage of the Ranger's class on her side. Renita could use spell combos too. She could dual cast and had used the same to keep her movement type spell and attack type spell active at the same time. But she couldn't stack her spells yet. It meant she couldn't enhance a single spell type's effect twice or thrice its original delivery. Nor could she raise the output of her spell executions than their default values. That's why she only ran out of mana and was slightly exhausted but wasn't suffering as much as Aaron did after their match. Apart from suffering stack-sedated perception side effects, the Butcher's mana circuits were also affected severely. Due to that, he wasn't in a position to execute spells for the day. Otherwise, he would have continued his winning streak after using the healing spell and some potions. Around 9 a.m. Aaron met up with his new party at an open space surrounded by dense vegetation. These spots were created by students over the years just by practicing their combat abilities. Jake Sullivan, Becky White, and Steve Austin were the usual faces among those gathered. But they were accompanied by 3 more faces. Renita Diabrio was there as well. She was standing alongside Becky who was telling her about some stuff. Then there were 2 rankless students. They had been invited to be here by Steve and Becky on Aaron's direction. The Butcher wanted Steve to handle their recruitment at first to cement his leadership. But he lost his ranking battle yesterday. That certainly wasn't going to improve the party's image in the recruit's eyes if he were to go alone. That's why Aaron sent Becky along with Steve. She had won spectacularly in her match against a strong opponent. Her presence with Steve would be enough to neutralize the negative psych impact. Of course, by now everyone had understood that Steve was only going to be used as a front face. Aaron was going to be their real leader in the dark. His performance was enough to assert his dominance over them. They just couldn't figure out why he insisted on Steve being the leader on paper. Aaron and Jake were the last pair to arrive at the meeting. The former straight up sat on the ground and hinted to others to do the same. The ladies were a little reluctant to dirty their clothes this early in the morning. But they subconsciously obliged at once after seeing Aaron's emotionless eyes. The crowd was now seated in a circle. The Butcher started his speech after ensuring everyone was paying attention to him. So hi there. I'll tell you why we are meeting today. Author note, it's the holiday season that one would find themselves to be the busiest they've ever been in the entire year. These days are supposed to be relaxing but end up giving you the most work. I aim to finish writing 100 chapters by the end of today. But so far, I've only managed to outline upcoming releases. Anywho. Happy Diwali, guys. Stay blessed and enjoy life outdoors with your family and friends. Too much reading in isolation isn't good for your mental health. Chapter 92, Anna and Belle. Aaron spoke with a plain voice that didn't exude any excitement. But one could subconsciously feel he was weighing his words carefully. But first, let's have a little self-introduction round, shall we? I'll go first. Name's Aaron Idril. I'm practicing a lightning element technique and the spells of the same element. I'm aiming to be a close combat expert. My BTP is 14. And I'll serve as the main damage dealer for our party in the future. Aaron looked at Jake who caught his cue. Hello. I'm Jake Sullivan. I'll serve as the tank. My water element technique is of the same class and my spells in the future will also be based on the same class. My current BTP is 10 but I can feel. Fatty, no need to come up with an excuse. Having a low BTP is not a crime. Especially if you could beat a stronger opponent than you. We have a certain someone in our party who till yesterday had the second highest BTP value in our group. Yet he couldn't beat an opponent lower in BTP value than him. Becky's haughtiness shifted the focus of the conversation from Jake to her before heading in Steve's direction. But soon she pulled the attention back on herself, lest their real boss becomes angry. Alright. So I'm Rebecca White. But you can call me Becky. I was going to choose the healer's path. But someone opened my eyes to the obvious truth in front of me and made me realize I'm better suited as a mage. My BTP is 11. And I'll take care of the medium range attack spells. All the spells in my repertoire will be based on this role. Next was Steve's turn. He was a little downcast by Becky's snarky remark. but he was aware that she was speaking the truth. He summed up his perseverance to self-introduce himself. My name's Steve Austin. Yes, I lost my first match yesterday. But I'll improve myself soon by working twice as hard as the previous me. My BTP is 14. I'll be the berserker of our team. I'll serve as a damage dealer on the front lines with Aaron. I can also assist Becky with my medium-range spells. Due to my class's speciality, I can use my skills to fill up the gaps left in our offense as well as defense. Renita didn't waste time and went up next. Hello. You guys already know my name. It's Renita Diabrio. My class is that of a ranger. I can take care of ranged attacks with my AoE spell. But my ranger spells in tracking need some practice. My BTP value is technically 15. But it's just one step away from turning 16. That's why it is shocking for me that this guy could beat me up with his BTP of 14. Renita didn't hide her displeasure from yesterday's battle results while eyeing the butcher. Listening to Aaron's BTP value made it even worse. Now she wanted a rematch with him more than ever to settle her score. But the guy who was the target of her scorn acted like he didn't care and stated what he had to say. Okay. That's it for our regular party members for now. The reserve members would give their introductions next. Aaron looked at the two new people after saying that. One of them was a kid with spectacles sitting unevenly on his nose. They obviously needed a repair. The boy had a lean build and his stature was a little smaller than Aaron. The latter was immediately pleased that he wasn't the shortest guy in their party anymore. The other student was a girl. She looked more mature for her age due to all the curves at the right places. She was lively and energetic. Aaron could see that she was barely keeping herself from speaking abruptly. She was still rankless after all. Even if they all were a student of the same class and age, she needed to give respect to the novice rankers in front of her. She only spoke after Aaron nodded at her. Yo, what's up, folks? So my name's Oriana Amaris. But I'd prefer it if you could call me Anna. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you guys for informing us about the auction event. We weren't going to attend it due to still being rankless. But now we have good techniques and spells for future use. And that's all because of you. And thanks a ton for trusting and inviting us to your group despite us still being rankless. I can't. Anna, sorry for interrupting you. But let me be clear about a few things. First, don't talk about that event so casually anywhere. Even if it's just us at this place. Use your audio channel if you really have to. You'd cause great damage to all of us including yourself if a mishap happens. Second, we did everything to make our party stronger. You can consider this as an investment from our end. And we'll accept certain standards of performance in your roles as a repayment. This is a simple form of exchange. So you don't need to be overly courteous with us. We are one team after all. And third, this is a round of self-introduction. We'd prefer if you could get back on that as soon as possible. I'm not trying to be a drill sergeant here. But a party has to be serious in its conduct when there's a need for it to be so. We'll have time to talk casually after I finish whatever I have to say. Trust me, it's important. That's why I've called you guys here in the first place even when intra-class battles are still so many days away from us. Aaron cut short Anna's blabbermouth. The latter bit her tongue to show that she had realized her mistake. Ah, my bad. Forgive me, Sir Aaron. You don't need to call me sir. Then Novice Aaron. TCH. Plain Aaron would be fine. Alright. Sorry, Aaron. I just get carried away sometimes. Although I'm yet to enter the novice rank, I know what I want to do. I'll choose the healer's path. I've been told by Becky that we'll serve as reserve members. I don't know how we can help you with our current rankless status. But rest assured, I'll do everything I can to support my team. Anna patted her chest in confidence. Anna's cheerful presence made the mood a little lighter for everybody. Aaron only gave a mild smile as a response before looking at the kid with specs. Nice to meet you. My name is Belle Longstone. I'm planning to become a historian. Like Anna here, I'm opting for a non-combat class. But if you guys want, I can choose a different class. Bell said this while adjusting his oddly shaped specs in vain. Author note, hello. This chapter was mostly just a convo among Aaron's party members. Let me know if this type of narration is okay. Personally, I feel that the readability is improved. But if the third-person narration is preferred, we can adjust the later chapters accordingly. Chapter 93, Pros and Cons of Apprenticeship. Chapter 93, Pros and Cons of Apprenticeship. But if you guys want, I can choose a different class. Bell said this while adjusting his oddly shaped specs in vain. Aaron pacified him with his words. Bell, you don't need to change your class for us. Rather, we wanted a historian in our team. That's why you were approached. But I didn't tell anyone about my choice to become a historian till now. How did you know that I'd choose this class? Bell, just look at yourself, man. Do you have what it takes to choose a combat-oriented profession? Do you think others can't see that and read you like an open book you are? Historian was going to be your most likely choice. But that's not important here. I've called you guys here to inform you about a few things. That way, we'd be able to gain maximum benefits in the coming days. First, Anna and Belle would not join our party until they officially start their ranking journey. But that doesn't mean they'd stay idle. Anna, you need to apply for a job at LA's Department of Health. They'd place you in one of the infirmaries on the Academy's ground. You would gain experience in treating rankers and earning MERPs at the same time this way. Likewise, Belle should apply for a job in the library department. You'd stay out of trouble while expanding your knowledge. Earning MERPs is an added advantage. I'd like all of us to get apprenticed by respective adapt rank professors by the end of this year. The earlier you could pull it off, the better. Apprenticeship isn't a cakewalk. There are some disadvantages to accepting it. First, your day would become more hectic as you might get called by your master anytime they see fit. That can put pressure on you to arrange your schedule to accommodate your lectures, job, training, and more in such a way that they won't hinder your apprenticeship. Second, you might have to tag along with your master outside the academy grounds if and when they need to do so. The adapt level professors only take one class a week because they tend to leave the academy grounds to run errands for LA, partake in personal missions, answer a summons by the kingdom, etc. So accompanying your master for almost a week might disrupt all your planning for the week. Of course, masters won't necessarily try to sabotage your routine. They take your job, lectures, and training into consideration and coordinate with LA before issuing a summon to you. But still, it might get a little difficult for us apprentices. Of course, there's a certain factor of risk involved. And lastly, master would pay in MERPs or some other form for your services. But apprenticeship isn't all that lucrative MERPs-wise. You are better off doing your regular job if earning MERPs is all you care about. But what you gain instead, in abundance, would be an on-field experience. The monetary issue prevents most of the poor students from getting into the program, but trust me when I say this. You don't want to miss gaining experience right now. Especially if you want to be a good ranker of your generation. The biggest advantage of this Master Apprentice program is that you'd potentially get an unrestricted amount of knowledge in your field. Your master is responsible for teaching you stuff in your class. You won't have to pay in MERPs for those learning sessions like you do for the Academy's lectures and on-field programs. And the second advantage would be that nobody would try to mess with you. It is quiet for now. But inter-year ranking wars have the potential to completely dry your accounts of all your MERPs if you are unlucky and not backed by someone influential in LA or outside it. In short, the advantages of receiving an apprenticeship far outweigh its disadvantages. We must aim to get into the program from the start if we want to get those advantages to ourselves. I want you guys to think hard about what you need to do as a ranker all your life. Once you do that, gather information regarding any possible adapt rankers from the same field who take in apprentices. Know about what conditions you need to meet to get apprenticed by them. And start working on those conditions so that you can fulfill them before your rivals. Ideally, the apprenticeship program is for second-year students and onwards. But there isn't any rule about whether or not you should have the information and try to meet the conditions of apprenticeship. So that's what we will do. We are going to streamline our efforts so that we can get maximum output from our invested time and efforts. I'd suggest you choose your masters from the field or job posting you are a part of. That way, you will have maximum time with your master who can guide you in your field while you are doing your job. Your master will be aware of your schedule on a personal level so the instances of your schedule getting disturbed would be minimum. Plus, you'd save time. I, for example, have decided to opt for an apprenticeship offered by Adapt Marla. I'll have my Basank missions as a source to earn MERPs. Adapt Marla isn't a regular professor in LA and she mostly stays at her posting at LA's border. So I'll be able to sync my apprenticeship with personal missions. Basank is the best place to earn MERPs in a short time. But it won't provide you with the guidance you need to progress speedily in your ranking journey. Most of you guys are not ready for hunting outside yet. So we'll think about running missions for Basank as a party when you get some experience under your belt. I want us to raise our individual prowess, as well as our potential as a team to the best possible way we can in this crucial period. That's because there's going to be an event before the end of the year for our first years. That event will only allow team participation. And only the strongest team will be the biggest beneficiary of that event. I want that beneficiary to be us. Aaron stopped after saying till here so that his instructions would sink into his team members' heads. Only now did the others realize that Aaron had been aiming to play a long game. Renia couldn't help asking. So you tipped us off about that event so that we could get the best techniques and spells for ourselves without going broke or employed. Also that we'd have a clear road to ourselves to get apprenticed. Why do I think that you are not gathering teammates but raising pawns for your benefit? And what's with this so-called event? I would have thought that you are spouting nonsense if your information about the previous event did not pan out. That being said, can you tell us about the event from the get-go so that we could trust you more? Steve didn't like that Aaron was being questioned by a girl who had just joined their party. He wanted to rebuke her but was stopped by Becky. The latter is also keen on knowing about the event now. But mostly, Becky wanted to see how Aaron would reply. The guy was still a mystery to her. He had all the crucial pieces of information despite being from a backwater town. And nobody knew who or what his source to get such information was. Of course, Becky was intrigued. So she let a newbie question their de facto leader. Aaron didn't even flinch when he was called out for his goals. He looked into Renita's eyes while saying, "Look, I'd be lying if I said that I helped you gain resources because of the goodness of my heart. As I've already said, this is a form of investment. But it doesn't mean that you didn't or wouldn't gain anything from my selfishness, does it? Forget about me saying anything about the event before the right time to do so arrives. I'll not allow anyone to mess up with my plans by risking an info leak. I'm only telling you to improve yourself as an individual and as a team. I'm doing all I can to help you achieve just that. And it's not like I would stay idle in the process. I'm not making my team stronger so that they can carry me in ranking wars and help me earn freebie merps. I'll probably work the hardest among you to reach my goals. So what's wrong with me asking you to keep up with me? If you want the easy life in LA, I'd suggest you quit this team. We would have to ensure that you won't say anything about the event or any of the remaining members to anyone with a binding contract. Do that, and I'll ensure that there'd be no bad blood between us even if you decide to walk out of the team. I'll just find your replacement and aim for the same goal I've been aiming for from the very start. So I'll ask this to all of you. Who wants to quit being part of this team? Chapter 94, Scrooge. I'll ask this to all of you. Who wants to quit being part of this team? Aaron sent the ball to his team members' court. He blatantly dealt with all the in-your-face criticism coming his way. He didn't want anyone to quit the team. Because he had thought really hard about who his teammates should be right after Steve had approached him. He preferred doing things solo. But his past experiences had taught him that there were several limitations in that approach. Joining someone's team would also restrict his plans. That's why he decided to form and control a team of his own. That way, he'd be able to gain party-based benefits while keeping his freedom intact for the most part. So he had selected his teammates after a long round of deliberation. Obviously, he didn't want the efforts that he had invested in these teammates to go in vain. But if they couldn't understand that there's always going to be something expected from them no matter which team they belong to, he might as well let them go to make room for new candidates. Thankfully, Aaron didn't have to go that far. Because nobody volunteered to quit. Aaron waited for a while before continuing. I'll take your silence as your confirmation to continue being part of the team. Good. Now let's talk about the possible improvements you can introduce in your current battling style. Steve, you have the biggest scope to grow your strength in a short while. Your earth element spell Yemaduri Medif belongs to a school of spells that I think is not suitable for you. Thankfully, it is the only stray spell from that school of spells in your arsenal. You don't need to ponder over which school to choose at F rank. But figuring out the one that suits you most would help you at the early stages. So it'd be better if you could just drop that spell. I'd suggest you a spell that would suit you the most. The spell's name is Zemliano Ikulak. It belongs to a school that requires you to shout out the incantation or spell's name while imbuing mana in your vocal cords. This school focuses on controlling mana flow from the outside with the help of auditory mana fluctuations. But in return, it allows for almost immediate execution by decreasing the casting time. That's what you need right now. Your berserking class anyway draws enough attention on the battlefield. So you are not losing the advantage of surprise you never had. In contrast, it may work in our favor as your call might force our opponents to focus on you. That'd give us more room to counter their attacks and launch an offensive. As for you, Jake. Aaron kept on giving individual advice to all his party mates. The advice he gave to Steve was something the latter had figured out on his own in Aaron's previous timeline after a few months. Steve gave up on Yemaduri Medif after a few months of failures and focused on spells that belonged to a specific school. That decision finally changed his performance on the field and made him a capable berserker. His rise to prominence started from that point. Aaron had cut short that learning process by telling the guy what he needed to do. That would help him realize his potential sooner than naturally ordained. Of course, Aaron didn't remember the growth requirement for each of his teammates. He was a recluse, so he hardly paid attention to the rising stars of LA. Whatever he could remember about those students was only a part of the truth known to the masses. But Aaron's knowledge as a previous D-rank entity was still enough to guide the novices. So he kept on ensuring his teammates' respective paths were optimized. Everyone present at the scene was impressed by Aaron's knowledge and know-how. Even Renita was no exception. She had interrupted Aaron midway and asked him how he knew so much about spells, techniques, and other miscellaneous stuff that wasn't strictly related to his field. The guy just told her that his Aunt Nina had made him aware of these aspects from a very young age. Aaron's lie became believable because he told his teammates that Nina was a seer rank, which was a known truth among them. They started paying more attention to the butcher as a result. Then Aaron organized a one-on-one duel among his teammates. He went up against Steve despite Renita's insistence to have a rematch. Aaron was a berserker in his previous life. He had most to offer in terms of guidance to the current berserker in their team. He'd often pause midway during their duel and instruct Steve about his stances. The latter would listen carefully and try to implement the same in his next line of attacks. The other rankers battled among themselves as per Aaron's instructions. Anna and Belle watched from afar. The duo was glad they could join a team with such capable members. And they were most reverent towards Aaron, who had impressed them with his insights. The sun had to set for the team to end their practice session. Every student had now started stocking up on food in their ID stones. So an entire day without having to visit the canteen wasn't a big deal. Aaron entered the ranking war and completed his 5 screen-assigned battles. He had already fought 2 of them on the first day of the ranking war. Therefore he only needed to take part in 3 more battles assigned randomly by LA. The butcher received 5 right-to-battle challenger passes after completing his 5th battle. The academy mandated that a student needed to partake in a set number of battles arranged by the spectral screen randomizer before they start issuing challenges of their own. The number of mandatory battles differed from time to time depending upon the availability of students and their respective performances. But they'd be issued an equal number of challenger passes as the number of times they were required to fight. Aaron was unscathed but out of mana after his 3rd match. He had tried different spell combos to calibrate their executions, efficiency, and more to his current standards. The experiments obviously made it difficult for him to win the matches straight away. But he gained a lot of insights into how to time sedated perception at the right time for each active spell. The butcher again organized a party meeting the next day and started guiding his teammates. He fought with Renita after her persistent nagging and beat her up so badly that she didn't ask him to battle again. Renita realized that Aaron was only experimenting with his spell combos the first time they fought. He was easily able to defeat her if he restricted himself to his usual spell. Of course, what Renita didn't know was that Aaron was using spell hyperdrive when battling against her. But this time, he kept sedated perception out of the equation and controlled the uptime of the hyperdrive to minimize its side effects. Renita's battle experience was no joke. The class of a ranger suited her. But that didn't stop her from gaining insights in close combat style after seeing Aaron fight with his teammates from a keen spectator's perspective. She was a natural fighter that focused on maximizing her battle potential in every aspect. Although her technique didn't suit the close combat style, her elemental affinity did. So she used every trick in her sleeve to handle Aaron when she fell into his attacking range. But even after so many attempts, Aaron proved his battle superiority and defeated her fair and square. Aaron trained and guided Steve the most. The latter had realized that Aaron knew more about the path of a berserker than any assistant professor whose private lectures he had attended after paying in MERPs. And the best thing about Aaron's guidance was that the teammates didn't need to pay Aaron anything. Or so they thought. But the shameless guy demanded a varying amount of MERPs from each of them depending upon the corresponding efforts he had put in. Steve needed to pay the most and Becky needed to pay the least. Anna and Belle thought they didn't need to pay anything since they weren't guided by their leader. But they too were charged for being an audience to his teaching sessions by a Scrooge that was Aaron. Of course, what Aaron charged was a lot less than the amount they needed to pay if they attended private lectures. And Aaron's guidance was even more effective than those lectures. But that fact didn't lessen the bitterness they felt towards Scrooge. Now they would pay undivided attention to Aaron to get the best value for their MERPs. Aaron was aiming for this very psyche to develop from the start. Of course, he'd always welcome more MERPs. But that wasn't his main objective in charging his teammates for his guidance. Human beings had a habit of ignoring the things that were made easily available to them. And the freebies were something they paid the least amount of importance to. The butcher ensured that his lessons and guidance were effectively implemented by putting the MERPs tag on them. And it worked. His teammates started seeing the party meetings as private lectures after they realized they had to pay for his services. Nothing that is worthwhile having, ever comes free in this world. This also made Aaron's teammates understand the importance of having a fixed source of MERPs income. They had decided to implement whatever Aaron had taught and guided them so far to get employed in their respective fields. Their accounts were shrinking in MERPs after all. Chapter 95, Wonkers and Wanking Battles. A new day arrived with many possibilities. Today, Aaron was aiming to use his challenger passes. He made use of the data he collected over the flying platform to zero in on the first 5 weakest students. The butcher unabashedly issued challenges to these 5 weak-ass students. Of course, by now, Aaron was recognized as one of the top fighters in his class. So even if they had to accept these challenges, they didn't go beyond the minimum participation amount despite Aaron's nudging. Aaron quickly beat up the first 4 students mercilessly while experimenting with his spells combo. As a result, he was soon going to run out of mana after his 4th battle. That's why he had decided to finish his 5th and final match of the day. But his opponent had other plans. Rami Richards was a straight shooter. He wore his heart on his sleeves and talked at length about what he was feeling at the time. That wouldn't have been a major problem in itself if he hadn't had a lisp. His R's would turn into W's because of his speech impediment. Therefore every word that had the letter R in it would be pronounced weirdly by Rami Richards. You and it will, why don't you pick up fights with other students of your level? You clearly know we are not your match. Such wanking battles won't give any learning experience to either you or us weak students. So why partake in these meaningless battles? Rami started speaking before the countdown to the battle started. His speech made an explosion of laughter go off in the audience surrounding the battlefield. Ha 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 ha. Wanking battle, he says. KKKKKKKKK. This was the biggest fumble Richie has made thus far. I'm gonna die of stomachache. One student started rolling on the floor after expressing his inability to control his laughter. I wouldn't want to be part of such a battle if you ask me. Say, what will be the rules of this wanking VOV? He. Well, it depends. There should be categories like the longest wanker, the quickest wanker. Then there should be categories based on the, let's say, the produce. Its quantity can be one such criterion for declaring the winner between 2 wankers. Ha 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 ha. The students kept on finding new things to talk about on the subject of wanking. The laughter only increased in its liveliness as a result. So far the students had found alternate pronunciations and their respective meanings for some of the most popular terms. For example, wanker, someone who partakes in wanking wars. And wanking journey, a process a wanker has to go through to become the ultimate wanker of their generation. Now every male student talked about being a wanker than their peers. Of course, the girls laughed at the jokes too. But they maintained a certain decorum. Or at least they tried to. This gender-encompassing fumble was too wild to handle even for the battle referee, who happened to be Julie Eckhart. She kept her hand pressed against her lips to control her laughter and nudged the participants to start the battle. Apart from having such a lisp, Rami was also gifted with the ability to keep a straight face in any situation. It held true even when his lisp turns a serious situation into that of a comedy. He had been doing this from his childhood after all. He had a lot of experience handling such situations. So he didn't break his serious face and kept on staring at Aaron, who was also struggling to tame his laughter. Well, why don't you answer me? Please don't speak anymore, Rami. Listen, man, I'm doing this for the quickest and easiest way to earn MERPs. I don't have any ulterior motive to humiliate my opponents. Why don't you quit as soon as the battle starts? Ha! You wish. You think I'm not strong enough. But I'll pronounced, wake, your ass as soon as you come in my attacking wange. Rami just couldn't keep his mouth shut and his fumbles at bay. His declaration of waking Aaron's ass caused another bout of laughter to spread among the crowds. That's right. Even the crowds of the audience surrounding other battlefields had turned into the spectators of Aaron's match with Rami. Aaron had a headache handling his current opponent. He was dragging the match unnecessarily without signaling to Julie of his readiness so that the countdown could start. Just when the butcher thought of saying something, Rami nodded his head at Julie indicating he was ready. The countdown started soon as a result. This time, the gem dragged the match longer by executing sedated perception autonomously again. Aaron wasn't as surprised as he was the first time. But this uncalled for spell execution still confused him. Rami was still far away from him. And the countdown wasn't over yet. But he soon got the answer as to why the gem executed the spell. Beware. This guy is crafty. He is using silent incantation. Aaron heard a gender-neutral voice in the almost stagnant world. He didn't ask stupid questions to that voice like "Who are you?" because it was already apparent to him that it was the gem. He also didn't ask the gem as to why it started to talk to him now all of a sudden. He had already realized that he didn't hold the initiative in their talk. If the gem wanted to speak to him, it could. And there's nothing he could do about it if the artifact decided to maintain silence. Therefore, Aaron mentally nodded at the suggestion while replying. All right. Thanks for the heads up. Let's talk someday about our situation when you think the time is right. Aaron focused on his current battle for the time being. He replayed the gem's warning in his head. Only now did he realize how cunning Rami was. He had been using silent spell casting all this time. No wonder he was trying to drag the match so much. And Rami could do that while speaking in between. That meant his casting type allowed him to hit pause on the incantation. That meant his spell type was derived from 2 schools of spells, which allowed him to cast the silent incantation spells while being interrupted. Such spell type places less burden on the mana circuit and focuses more on controlling the surrounding mana. Of course, since he was controlling the surrounding mana with his mana sense and not employing the mana circuit that he could control with better efficiency, the casting time was long. And any interruption would stretch it even longer. But the advantages of such a spell type made up for its disadvantages. First, it would catch the opponents off guard if cast carefully. Second, it wouldn't deplete the user's mana as much as it would if they employed their mana circuits. That meant they could battle with their opponents for longer. And lastly, since the surrounding mana was getting used in the casting of the spell, the limiter on the spell's output wasn't dependent on the user's mana storage. They could cast such spells with the enhanced output if their intelligence and mana sense allows for. In short, Raimi had the potential to seriously damage Aaron if his attacks landed on the latter, despite their differences in the BTP value. Winning the match was still a far-fetched idea in most likelihood. But Raimi seemed optimistic. He was probably trying to catch Aaron off guard by distracting him and the audience with his fumble. His innocent fumble was probably fake too. The guy knew that his lisp would prevent him from speaking such words normally. Yet he still did it. He was aiming to take down the mammoth standing in front of him, that was Aaron, with the element of surprise by his side. Aaron wasn't aware of Raimi's battle style from his previous timeline. That's because the latter wasn't that famous. It must have been because every opponent of his at that time would have taken countermeasures against him once his spell type and its weaknesses were revealed. Aaron wasn't a spectator to these events in his previous timeline. So he couldn't have known. Sigh. I can't never really underestimate an opponent, can I? Aaron thought to himself. He saw a faint intrinsic diagram forming in front of Raimi. It was the manifestation of the spell's activation. Since Raimi wasn't using his mana circuits to execute his spells, this manifestation was natural. Aaron saw that the countdown was soon going to turn to 0. He kept his spell combo experiments aside for now. What he needed to do right now was to take down Raimi before he could cast his spells. He wasn't a fan of being injured by a newbie with his craftiness after all. Aaron executed blitz steps as soon as the counter hit 0. The battle ring was laid over a sensor array. It could disqualify him if he casts the spell before the countdown finishes. But it apparently didn't stop Raimi from breaking the same rule because of the spell's peculiarity. Aaron quickly reached Raimi's back and performed a lightning-coated chop on the back of his opponent's neck. The difference in their body stats and the effect of sedated perception was enough for Aaron to pull off such an act. Raimi's spell diagram started dispersing in the air right after Aaron's chop landed on him. The guy started closing his eyes, indicating that he was about to faint. Sedated perception got deactivated right after that. Aaron looked at his opponent, who by now crashed onto the ground. You almost got me, whammy witchets. Almost. The butcher had this thought as he turned to leave the battle ring. Chapter 96, Discipleship. Please be seated. As I've already said, I'll not waste my time explaining the basics of Poti-Wunwing. Some of you have passed my entrance test. Others need to take up private lectures conducted by other professors if they wish to learn the basics. Lavigne de Montmorency started her first lecture in the most straightforward manner possible. Of course, Aaron and Jake were there among the seated students. The first year is only the beginning for you guys as students of LA. But I expect my students to have elementary knowledge in my field from an early age. That's because 5 years are far too short for me to bestow all that I could teach you. The field of potion making is as mysterious as the ranking journey itself. It needs a specific skill set that isn't found in every student of the subject. And that's a good thing for those who have it. Poti-Wunwing is one of the most lucrative businesses out there. That is if you're a good Poti-Wunner and know what you're doing. I can't teach you how to do business. At least I don't want to. But I can certainly guide you in the right direction when it comes to the art of concoctions. The higher you climb the ranking ladder, the more you realize the wondrous nature of mana. It is the genesis of all concepts that are related to mana. And as these concepts, spread across various fields, have the same origin, it becomes possible for an accomplished expert in one particular field to mimic the expertise of someone in the other. Take our field for example. Poti-Wunwing at the rudimentary level is supposed to be limited to be used by rankers and animals. Basically by the living beings. But at its advanced levels, it can be used to strengthen a normal weapon in such a way that it becomes an artifact. Use Poti-Wunwing in combination with specific spells and the concoction will spread on any surface to act like an array. The elemental effects of spells can also be trapped into a concoction so that they can be used as instant spell executions. At its profound level, the Poti-Wunwing can be used to advance quickly and steadily in your ranking journey without having any adverse effects. In short, the field is as vast as an ocean. Or probably more than that. It is only limited by the ranker's talents and imagination. But you are far from achieving any of the marvelous feats in the field of Poti-Wunwing yet. What you need right now is a strong start. The very first concoction formula I'll be teaching you guys is a potion named Novice Speed Boost. As the name suggests, It is a potion intended for novice rankers. It temporarily raises the AGI stat of a ranker upon consumption. The effect and potion's active time would depend upon its quality. There are no drawbacks other than the fact that one would feel exhausted after the potion's effect wears off. As you must have known by now, this novice potion is one of the most basic concoctions novice rankers carry in their person all the time. Since it could stay potent for months on end, it has a very high stock-up value. Novice Speed Boost is an element-neutral potion. Therefore, it can be used by anyone. But it is frequently used by close combat experts to enhance their natural advantage. Now about the potion's formula itself. Levine started describing the potion's formula and its intricacies. She was very detailed in her explanations. And she also told her students about any possible mishaps that could happen during the process. Most students present were glad that they had chosen to get lectured by Levine over other professors. Usually, other potion maker professors would start by teaching about elementary potions. But here, Levine had given them a recipe for a novice potion right in her first ever lecture. This was the most dreamlike situation for students who wanted to make their career in the field. That's because they could immediately start the practice for a novice potion as soon as the lecture got over. These potioneer wannabe students didn't have many ways to earn MERPs. But that could all change if they were able to make novice potions. They could sell such potions to LA in exchange for MERPs, or they could trade them with other students. This was the biggest reason for Aaron to join Levin's private lectures. He could immediately start to encash his novice pioneering skills while building a better foundation. He already knew about the potion's formula from his previous timelines. But he listened to the adept ranker's explanation with absolute attention. Aaron could now see that Levine was a better teacher than most adept level rankers teaching across various fields. Her suggestions were precise and her solutions to various potion-related problems were on point. Levine then talked about various aspects of novice poti one that one needed to pay attention to no matter what kind of potion they intended to make. Her lecture stretched till 2 p.m., after which she decided to finish it by stating some precautions. The students left the lecture room. Aaron told Jake to do the same and that he'd catch up with his team in the canteen after some time. "Hello, Madam Montmorency. My name is Aaron Idril. Honored to be attending your lectures. I was wondering if I could have some of your time." Aaron greeted Levine with a light bow. The latter stopped reading from her notes and looked at the origin of the interruption. "What is it, boy? You should have asked about the doubts related to—" "I don't have any doubts related to the potion, madam. Miss Levine is fine." "All right. Miss Levine, kindly teach me the modified recipe you came up with instead of the standardized recipe you just explained." "Aaron boy, do you know what you are asking?" "Of course, Miss Levine. I was trained by a C rank healer and a poti oneer before coming into LA. So I know what it means for a poti oneer to teach their modified recipes to anyone. I'm confident enough in my skills as a novice poti oneer. Plus, I already know about the standardized recipes of all stat value enhancement potions. What I want are the modified recipes of the same from you so that I would be able to make higher star variants. I'm ready to go through another round of tests if that can allow you to see me as a worthy disciple. It's not about your worthiness as a poti oneer, Aaron." Of course, Levine was going to reject Aaron. The guy just popped out from nowhere and asked her to take him as her disciple. A disciple-master relationship was even more personal than what apprenticeship would entail. An apprenticeship ends when a student graduates or leaves LA. But discipleship could stay active for a lifetime. Unless of course if and when a disciple leaves their master behind. An apprenticeship was a professional way of forming a mutually beneficial relationship between higher and lower level rankers. Although it was more up and personal than professor-student interactions, it still had limits. Moreover, it would usually have an expiry date. But discipleship didn't have such an end date in a traditional sense. The ranker's custom dictated disciples should be considered as your kin. The disciples also had moral obligations to listen to their masters even if they lost contact for years on end. So it was natural that Levine would reject Aaron's ludicrous demands. But the butcher interrupted her before she could do so. "Please hear me out, Miss Levine. I'm not telling you to take me as your disciple without testing my worth. I also know that you are looking for a rare C-rank ingredient called Malva hibiscus." Aaron said that and lightly smiled at Levine before continuing. "And I know where to find it." Chapter 97, Beast Contract Spell. "I also know that you are looking for a rare C-rank ingredient called Malva hibiscus. And I know where to find it. I'll get it for you to commemorate our master-disciple bond." Aaron waited for Levine to answer patiently. He knew he was reaching it with the adept poti oneer in front of him, but he wanted to give it a shot anyway. The latter narrowed her eyes and carefully looked at Aaron. Then she spread her mana sense and carefully inspected the guy. "Oh. You are very close to breaking into the mid-stage of the novice rank. And what do we have here? Element of lightning, and there's something else as well. Element of time. It seems you have dual derived elemental affinities, Aaron Idril. And both are rare as well. Let me pull up your file next. Levine requested LA's administration to send her a file on Aaron via her spectral screen. She carefully read his history to verify his claims of being taught by a C-rank Poti-1er from a young age. Only after confirming all this did she speak to Aaron. Aaron, I don't know how you know that I was looking for that ingredient, but you are right. I'm desperate enough to find it through anyone, even if I have to take you as my disciple. I hope you know how difficult it is to find Malva hibiscus. It is one of the most sought-after ingredients in the C-rank. Unfortunately, it is also very rare to find and locate. Most importantly, it'll almost always be protected by a C-rank beast. You'd need a D-rank party or higher to even steal something like this without duking it out with the beast. Plus, you'd need to cross Lionheart's Beast Sanctuary and enter Thymyscira's Amazon to even have a chance of finding it. You on the other hand are only F-rank. I saw that you've completed so many missions from Bizank, but this expedition won't be like any other you've faced so far. How do you propose to achieve what you claim to do, even if I were to consider that you know about its location? And there are so many risks involved for you in that expedition. You can even lose your life. Why don't we do it this way? You tell me about the location first and I'll reward you with. Miss Levine, I thank you for being magnanimous enough not to ask about the source and authenticity of my intel. And thank you for worrying about my well-being as well. Rest assured, I don't have suicidal tendencies. I know how to get my hands on that ingredient without harming myself. But I'd need confirmation from you that you'd take me as your disciple if I were to deliver the ingredient to you. Aaron completed his proposal with an air of stoicism around him. He knew the risks involved in gathering a C-rank ingredient. It was located at the edges of Thymyscira Amazon after all. In Aaron's previous timeline, the same ingredient was found and retrieved by a fifth-year LA student whose feats got famous along with him after he was accepted as Levin's disciple. The butcher was going to take the page off from that guy's page without being the wiser. Sigh. All right. But you'd have to perform well in upcoming Poti-1ing lab tests and prove your skills first. From your records, it is apparent that you are a good fighter. But how good are you as a potion master? I'd like to see the answer to that question myself. I'll give you a go if you pass that test. You can prepare for your trip during this time. Of course, there won't be any official binding contract from my side. You'll just have to take my word for taking you as my disciple. Because I don't want my name to get dragged in case you die, get injured, or go missing during the retrieval. It'd be hard for me to convince your C-rank guardian it wasn't my fault if you don't come safe and sound from your trip. I know rankers need to maintain discretion among themselves. Everyone has secrets after all. So I won't ask you about the source of your information. But I'd give you a suggestion anyway. Make sure that your information is solid. I've seen far too many rankers falling into the trap of running after secret treasures only to get robbed by the ones who spread the rumors about such treasures in the first place. Lastly, here. I'll lend these novice potions to you. They might help you if you are in a pinch. You only have to pay for them if your retrieval trip turns futile. Otherwise, you can have them for free. Levine gave Aaron a set of novice potions that were worth thousands of merit points. The latter didn't show any reluctance in taking the same. He knew he'd succeed. So he saw those potions only as freebies. Thank you, Miss Levine. I'll be going now. Aaron bowed slightly before taking his leave. Levine didn't think much about Aaron after the conversation. She was taking a gamble without any risk involved to her. She'll think about taking Aaron as her disciple if and when he comes in one piece with that ingredient with him. Hello. I'd like to purchase a beast contract spell. Aaron came to Novice Treasury after he had his lunch with his teammates. He assigned them their post-lecture training schedule and appointed Steve as an overseer. Renita wasn't happy that she was being bossed around by a berserker who was weaker than her. But she didn't argue in front of Aaron. The Scrooge didn't like to take second opinions on his decisions. Of course, he told his team they can set a betting amount for their respective practice duels. That way, they'd all be serious even if they were conducting a practice session. Aaron's teammates were happy after knowing that they wouldn't have to pay a cut to the Scrooge because he would not be present with them. Whatever they gain during their practice sessions from their opponent will be theirs to keep. Aaron skipped practice with his teammates and came to Novice Treasury to finally get his hands on a beast contract spell. Reen's problem needed to be addressed after all. He couldn't make her stay as a pendant or a coffee mug all the time. Your name is Aaron, right? The kid who converted all his extals just a few days before the auction event. You were very lucky that time, weren't you? What I find strange is your friends also had the same idea as you and liquidated all their wealth in exchange for merps just at the right time. We can only call that a coincidence now, right? Haha. Anyway. About the beast contract spell. It is a rare, element-neutral spell that can be used by anyone. Plus, it doesn't have a specific rank in the sense that it is dependent on who is using it on whom. It's one of the most popular and most used transcendent spells out there among rankers. But most used doesn't mean easily available, kid. You need to say goodbye to 25k merps all at once to have that spell. Aaron knew the spell's price was going to be astounding, so he was mentally prepared. Thankfully, the E-rank mana blessing had earned him a hefty amount. Plus, he kept on winning big in his ranking battles. He also placed external bets on himself through his friends to gather more merps. Plus, he didn't even spare his teammates and collected merps from them for providing guidance every time. That's why his account balance had reached a staggering amount of 26,320 merps. The butcher knew the merps were only a way to gain better results. They don't hold any real value after all. That's why he didn't feel reluctant in parting with the amount he had earned through various means. Aaron bought the spell as easily as someone buying vegetables. This was a special spell that needed an array sheet to work in conjunction with the incantation. Thankfully, the amount of 25k covered all the necessities for him to cast the spell on Reen. Chapter 98, Incoming Hardships. Nicholas Scott, the receptionist, and the one in charge of novice treasury allowed Aaron to complete his transaction before continuing. Haha. My boy, even the most rich-ass kids would find it difficult to part with such an amount while maintaining a straight face. But you are different, aren't you? I see no fluctuation in your mana signature even when your account balance has come down by so much. I've checked out the records of your Basank missions and ranking war results so far. You are a capable lightning element fighter who also has an unused affinity in the time element. I think you can take on a novice beast and force it to submit to your will. This beast contract spell was the right decision on your part. The beast battle arena is still yet to be opened for first years. But LA has reared plenty of novice mana beasts in advance. I'm sure there'd be a lot of lightning element beasts among them for you to tame. I can arrange someone for you to take a quick look. What do you say? Aaron realized that the receptionist of the novice treasury was keeping tabs on him. But it couldn't be helped. The guy couldn't technically touch him on assumptions. But his and his teammates' wealth conversion to merps was far too coincidental for Nicholas to ignore the event. Thank you, Sir Nicholas. But I'd like to visit the Lionheart's Beast Sanctuary to tame my beast. Staying independent, huh? I don't dislike it. But there are many ways spell casting can go wrong. Are you sure you don't want it handled professionally in a controlled environment? I'm sure. Good day, sir. Aaron quickly left the novice treasury after his work was done. He didn't feel any negative emotions for him from Nicholas. But that didn't mean he'd let down his guard. Especially when he had so many things to hide. Next, he went to Basank and accepted some random lucrative missions. He was going to visit the Beast Sanctuary tomorrow and meet with Marla. He might as well earn some merps while he was on it. Hello, Adapt Marla. How have you been? Aaron slightly bowed and greeted Marla with his signature boy next door smile. They were at the LA's border checkpost where Marla was positioned. Aaron. Glad to see you. I'm doing great, thanks to you. I scored a new D rank spell that I had been wanting to have from LA for years now. How did you find my ranking battles, Adapt Marla? Your performance was more than enough to state your exceptional skills as a close combat fighter. But my only concern is that Marla was about to say that Aaron's BTP and his progress in the ranking journey was still not enough for her to even think about offering an apprenticeship. But she was stopped midway when Aaron spread his mana sense and imbued it with his mana signature. Marla felt that Aaron was about to enter mid-stage in the novice rank. His BTP value must be close to 18 if that was the case. She was surprised but didn't lose her cool. How? She threw a question at Aaron only using one word. The latter also replied concisely. I'll be disciplined by Adapt Levine de Montmorency soon. Aaron spoke vaguely on purpose. But Marla thought for a while and concluded by herself after hearing his reply, nodding at him in response. This is the beauty of speaking half-truths. Aaron thought to himself. Levine was a highly capable poti-winner. She was known for making potions in various fields and categories. But the most sought-after potion she was famous for making was Novice Elixir. The potion had a high business value. It would sell like hotcakes within LA and outside it once Levine sold them through various channels. But the potion was heavily dependent on a few rare ingredients that were limited in production. Plus, the potion's manufacturing process was tedious and time-consuming. Therefore, Levine only made a limited number of these potions each year. It was mainly done to boost her account balance so that she could invest money in research of her level. Novice Elixir was widely popular for its effect of increasing a novice ranker's body stat values without any major side effects. Of course, the increment had its limitations. It wouldn't allow a ranker to skip through stages within the rank. But it was very useful if a ranker had just crossed a stage within the novice rank. That's why Marla believed that Aaron had used Novice Elixir to reach his current body stat values. The kid's increment stopped at the boundary between initial and mid-stage after all. How did you convince that stubborn vixen to take you as her disciple? Marla still asked the last doubt she had. As far she knew, Levine wouldn't take a disciple unless it was something major done by the kid in front of her. Well, let's just say that I have the means to offer her what she needs the most right now. Malva hibiscus. Marla blurted out the name of the ingredient she knew Levine needed the most. Only that ingredient can convince the adaptpoti one to even think about taking a disciple. Yes. But let's focus on our deal, shall we? Aaron diverted the subject to his apprenticeship after confirming Marla's guess. He knew too much talk on that subject would expose his half-truth. All right. Listen, Aaron. The reason I wanted to take Ken as my apprentice was because he was already in the mid-stage of the novice rank. His mana core had been liquefied and his mana circuit was expanding steadily within him. That is the bare minimum criterion for me to teach and employ my apprentice with ease. The biggest difference between a novice ranker in the initial stage and someone in the mid-stage is not the body stat values. It is the speed of mana recovery. A novice ranker in the mid-stage can recover their mana and thereby stamina more quickly than someone in the initial stage. You might think it is not as important as body stat values. But you need to consider the daily routine an apprentice needs to follow to understand its importance. Doing an apprenticeship is no joke. You have to do everything a normal student has to do. Reserve a time for self-training. Then partake in the training scheduled by your master. And follow your master in their work. Plus, you have to take part in mandatory ranking wars. Even the most vibrant students would carry black eye bags when they start their apprenticeship. That's why it is not meant for first-year students. They need to get used to their current curriculum before pushing their bodies to the limit. No matter how hard-working you are, the efforts I put in you will be wasted if your body is in a perpetual state of exhaustion. Furthermore, the practice of close combat style would drain the stamina out of you in a jiffy. You'd have to face these problems even when your body stat values have shot up so much in such a short time. That's because you are close to breaking through into mid-stage but you are not there yet. And it might take a while for you to achieve the stage breakthrough. And don't expect me to go easy on you because of your situation or your favor. Those are two distinct things. On the contrary, I might push you to your limits harder than I had initially planned just to make you cross that bridge of being a novice ranker in the mid-stage. So you tell me. Do you still want to continue after knowing these hardships are heading your way? Chapter 99, Dicerus left and right. Chapter 99, Dicerus left and right. So you tell me. Do you still want to continue after knowing these hardships are heading your way? I accept. Aaron didn't even think for a second before replying. He already knew about the reason Marla was reluctant to take him as her disciple even after he had played his cards right with her. He had known what she said was bound to happen to him. But the butcher was not going to shy away from putting hard work in the right place. Plus, if everything goes according to his plans, he might not have to struggle as much as Marla was planning to make him suffer. If the liquid stage was the minimum requirement for his schedule to proceed smoothly, he'd just have to enter that stage quickly. Simple as that. Sigh. All right. I'll take you as my apprentice. I'll register the same in LA's records so that we coordinate our schedules smoothly. Now let me give you a gift for your valuable tip. You can also consider this as your apprenticeship reward on joining. Marla retrieved a set of 2 guitars from her storage. The blades were 15-inch long, sleek and sharp in size. Each weapon had an H-shaped horizontal grip, which would result in the blade sitting above the user's knuckles. Then there was an arm guard woven into its construction that allowed for a better grip while securing the gripped hand. Because the weapon's blade is in line with the user's arm, the basic attack with a guitar is a direct thrust identical to a punch. That's why a guitar was referred to as a punching dagger. But the weapon could also be used for slashing. The design of the weapon allows the fighter to put their whole weight into a thrust, enabling an exceptional piercing power. A guitar user would target the head and upper body of their opponent, similar to boxing. The sides of the handle could be used for blocking. The defensive capabilities would increase, thanks to the arm guard. But the weapon's forte was almost unblockable thrusts if used at the right time. It also allowed for quick parries and swift slashes. But it wasn't meant for defense. Not really, at least. A dual guitar wielder had to enter the fray with all their bets placed on offense. They must be agile enough to dodge their opponent's attacks and strike, made possible because of the weapon's small size and lightweightedness. Marla had practiced guitar arts that had a lot of concepts taken from knuckle boxing arts. That's why she could teach Ken Riverine in the previous timeline. Thanks to that, the guy made it as a fine pugilist in his generation even before graduating from LA. Of course, Ken wasn't an ideal apprentice for Marla. She couldn't bestow a large chunk of guitar arts to him due to him practicing a close combat technique based on knuckle boxing. But it wasn't like she was looking to take him as his disciple. But Marla thought of another approach with Aaron if he could successfully sustain the training schedule assigned by her. Aaron was a close combat fighter of the lightning element like her. Plus he was used to using daggers. Marla could raise him to be a somewhat exact copy of her close combat style. Provided the boy could keep up, that is. Aaron took the weapons from Marla's hand. They looked extremely simple yet exceptionally deadly. He heard the latter's words when he was busy observing the artifacts in his hands. There are 5-star F-rank guitars. Plus, they have lightning element runes on them, making them element-specific artifacts only meant to be wielded by rankers of the same element. You won't find them in LA's novice treasury or open shops due to them being 5-star variants. I had received them as a gift. But I soon broke into E rank. So they are barely used at all. You are a lightning element ranker who focuses on speed. This set is tailor-made for you. I'd consider my debt towards you settled with this gift. And yeah, you can see the names the creator has given them on the inside of their arm guards. Aaron nodded at Marla after she finished speaking. He was all smiles after observing the weapons. He was happy Marla wasn't being stingy with her bestowal. As she said, the set was tailor-made for him. He checked the insides of the arm guard carefully to locate the names and soon found some text in a very small font etched over the surface. Dicerus left and Dicerus right. The butcher read the names of his new names out loud. The parts left and right was indicative of the hands they were intended to be wielded with. Aaron ran his lightning element mana through the weapons and their inscribed runes lit up. Unlike the element-neutral daggers he was used to wielding now which had the tongues of lightning dancing over its surface, the weapons he was using now didn't leak any lightning. This was the indication that the elementalized mana was running through the weapons via the runes without facing any resistance. The guitars only glowed faintly blue, and they looked less harmless than the daggers which used to shoot streams of lightning after every thrust and slash. But the butcher knew the weapons were many times more lethal than his now ex-weapons. Aaron had never used guitars in his previous life. So he wasn't sure how he should employ them in his attacks from now on. His battle prowess as a close combat fighter would get plummeted before it could see rise from its previous peak. That meant only one thing. More training was going to ensue. I'll give you a couple of days to get prepared. Meanwhile, I'll create a training and apprentice schedule for you to follow. Of course, your ID stone will keep track of everything and will let me know if you slack off. The punishments for such fouls would range from extra work, extra training regime, MERPS penalty, and more depending upon the severity. So make sure you follow whatever I tell you to follow and do. I'm planning to run some errands outside LA in a few weeks. I want you to be a decent fighter of your rank by then. Is there anything else you'd like to ask? No. I'll just run some Basank missions in the forest and meet you right here after 2 days. Alright. Don't use the guitars in the forest, Aaron. Otherwise, a mishap might happen as you are not used to them. Thank you for caring for me, Miss Marla. You are as kind as you are beautiful. There it is. I was wondering where your glib tongue had gone off to. Humu. Praise me more and I might beat your ass a little less than what I had been planning on doing. Hee hee. Here to serve, Master Marla. Now, if you'd excuse me. Aaron bowed to his now master after their conversation was over before heading swiftly towards the checkpost's exit gate. He had the most important thing to do in the forest. The butcher was going to use the beast contract spell on Reen. Chapter 100, Transformation. Arg. The moonlight was barely keeping away the dark conjured by the forest's dense vegetation. A boy in his teens could be seen struggling with something very peculiar inside a cave located seemingly nowhere in the middle of the wild. He looked to have short stature. His wavy black hair was a mess and his skin was sweating buckets all over. Of course, he seemed to have already anticipated his situation and therefore was only wearing his pants. The ground beneath him was lit with various mana runes arranged in an array. That light generated by array activation was the only source of luminance in the pitch-black cave. It looked like something semi-transparent was crawling on Aaron's skin, slowly making its way upwards after covering the large part of his torso and limbs. This very act seemed to be the reason behind his scream. His green eyes had been glowing with emerald luminance. His sharp but small nose and his V-shaped jawline had given him a kinda handsome yet boyish look. But all that charm could not shield him from his ongoing misery. His entire body seemed like it was on the verge of transformation. This was none other than Aaron Elijah Idril. He had been going through a beast contract spell inside the Lionheart's Beast Sanctuary. He had chosen an isolated spot for himself to go through with the process safely, away from the prying eyes. He had laid the spell's array after confirming that the cave was safe for him to cast the spell. The butcher's condition was special. The demon beast he was going to sign the beast contract with was already tamed by him through the blood ritual. He didn't know what would happen if he decides to proceed further with the spell. But he had concluded that it wouldn't be anything normal. Plus, he needed to keep Reen's identity hidden. Therefore, he couldn't perform the spell inside the safety of his dorm room. Aaron guessed that the process would garner attention. So it was better if he did it in the wild. And so far his guess had been spot on, even more so than he had previously anticipated. Aaron knew about the normal beast contract spell. It would allow the rancor to form an unbreakable bond with their tamed beast. But the spell itself was very simple. The rancor only needed to lay down the array that had 2 array eyes positioned in the yin-yang style. Then the rancor needed to stand inside one of the eyes and chant some incantations. The tamed beast whose will to fight had vanished needed to stay inside the other eye. The array would be lit up and the spell would activate after everything has been done correctly. The array would start shrinking. The runes present in the array would climb over the tamed beast and the rancor at the same time, finalizing the process. At the end of the spell's execution, the beast would have its body melted and the resulting essence would get attracted towards the rancor standing inside the other array eye. The essence would merge with the rancor on a superficial level. It would form a corresponding beast tattoo over the rancor's body, indicating that the process had been successful. All this would happen in the case of beast contract spell getting performed normally without any blood ritual involved. The normal beast contract spell would destroy the body of a beast forever. Only its soul would remain trapped inside a runic tattoo that would have its visual features. In return, the rancor would gain some or all the advantageous features of the beast, depending upon their elemental and inherent nature compatibilities. That's why rancors would perform the spell on the beasts who had the same elemental affinity and inherent nature as them. A synced contract between the rancor and beast would ensure that all the beastly powers get acquired by the former. The beast's soul would also get preserved without any abnormality. The part about inherent nature was vague. But generally, a rancor with ferocious inherent nature or battle style would prefer the beast of the same kind. And a rancor with sneaky attributes would choose to form a beast contract with an equally stealthy beast. The beastly features could be covered or overt depending on the way the rancor handled them. Some rancors who had made use of the beast contract spell would prefer to show their beastly features while the others would keep them hidden. But that was not all. A rancor could choose to invoke the soul residing in their tattoo through the beast manifestation. It was another part of the beast contract. It would create a semi-corporal body out of mana for the beast to temporarily reside in and perform their master's bidding. It didn't matter if the mana body got destroyed. The beast would return safely to its master's side if and that happened, getting retracted into the tattoo. Or the rancor could choose to do it willingly after cancelling the beast manifestation of their accord. The spell was advantageous to rancors in many ways. First, their bodily resilience would increase. Some of the body stat values would shoot up, enabling the rancors to gain a one-time boost in their ranking journey. Second, the rancors would gain the natural talents of the beast while keeping their intelligence intact. It allowed for better use of the same beastly features, raising the overall battle prowess of the rancor in one go. Third, the mana body of the beast in the beast manifestation would only be limited by the rancor's rank. An F-rank user could only grant their beast a body made of F-rank mana. But the beast would be able to exert the maximum potential of that particular rank with the body manifestation. That meant an F-rank user in the initial stage could have a trustworthy, undying companion in the upper stage of the same rank in the form of their contracted beast, as long as they could support the mana consumption. This also meant that the beast contract spell did not have a rank restriction. Its rank would automatically rise with the rancor. Plus, once cast, the beast contract spell would remain active until the user decided to end the contract with their current beast. Upon contract termination, the beast's essence would disperse in the thin air and its soul would be released from binding. The beast that had its contract terminated won't be able to be summoned back. The rancor would also experience a regression in their ranking journey. But the side effects won't be too severe for them. Therefore it could be concluded that there were almost no disadvantages of the spell. It allowed a rancor to amplify their battle power in a short time without facing any apparent consequences. The beast contract spell wasn't called a transcendent spell for a show. But something entirely different to normal spell execution was happening to Erin and Reen. Reen had been bloodbound to Erin through the blood ritual. So the array couldn't treat her as a different existence to Erin. The spell didn't destroy her body. Nor did it do anything to her soul. A fusion of bodies was taking place instead of the fleshly essence of the beast turning into a beastly tattoo. The semi-transparent stuff on Erin's body that was climbing up was Reen herself. She was getting fused with Erin's body. The whole process was extremely taxing on both Erin and Reen. The former felt like his skin, his innards, and his bones were getting dissolved in acid. And the latter just sent distress signals to her master via their mental connection. Erin couldn't see what was happening to him because he had closed his eyes and bit his lips to sustain the severe pain he was feeling. But he could feel that his fleshly essence and Reen's slimy stuff were getting mixed through the spell execution. All of Erin's spells were inadvertently getting manifested as his body's coping mechanism kicked in. That manifestation destroyed his clothes and made him butt naked. It took a while for the process to get finished. Erin was then seen laying on the ground with his hands spread apart. His eyes were closed. He wasn't unconscious. Just severely exhausted from the whole ordeal. Erin stayed that way and fell asleep. He had already closed the only exit the cave had. His cynic, paranoid nature had forced him to choose a location that wasn't populated by any dangerous beast. So he didn't have to worry about his safety. The dawn of the next day had just started making its presence known when Aaron opened his eyes. He first looked around himself with his groggy thoughts and blurry vision. The cave was still dark, but there were rays of lights piercing the makeshift closure made out of rocks and leaves. "Aaron, are you awake now?" The butcher heard a voice coming from seemingly nowhere. He recognized it to be Reen, so he started to look around some more to find her. "Reen, where are you?" He couldn't help but ask. His disorganized thoughts were slowly calming down in his head. "I'm here," said Reen. And immediately afterwards, Aaron saw transparent slimy stuff coming out of his palms. It looked like his skin was melting. But he didn't feel any pain. The slimy stuff oozing from the palms of his hands got concentrated and formed a mass before turning into the body of a beautiful female. Aaron opened his eyes wide open after seeing Reen take a corporal body that wasn't a mana body formed due to beast manifestation. Reen's body wasn't destroyed in the beast contract as it normally should be, thanks to the blood ritual with Aaron. But that was not all. When Aaron tried to get up, his hands and feet became jelly. This was the beast contract spell's effect taken to the extreme. Normally, the appearance and manifestation of beastly features on Ranker's body had a limit. They couldn't cross certain boundaries set by the Ranker's body. But what Aaron was seeing right now was the breach of those very boundaries. What happened to us last night wasn't a beast contract spell. The realization struck the butcher and made him aware of his current situation. But that didn't help him come out of his current predicament. He wanted to get up but felt like he didn't have any bones in his limbs. His torso also felt like it could cave in if there was some pressure applied to it. "Reen, how do you, should I say, solidify your body from the slimy stuff?" "I just will it and it happens." "Is it that difficult to do?" He. "Am I perhaps a genius?" "Oh, you are. Now send me your thoughts so that I can analyze them and fix myself." Aaron had decided to ask the expert. He didn't panic after seeing Reen's features getting manifested on his body. Neither was he worried about whether or not it would make things difficult for him or not. He thought with a calm mind. He realized that the blood ritual wasn't the only spoiler in the beast contract spell. Reen herself was the biggest spoiler. Her elemental affinity didn't create any conflict with Aaron at all. Not because she had lightning element affinity. But the butcher felt that she had affinities for all the elementals, making her element neutral. Same thing with Reen's inherent nature. It didn't have any specific inclination towards anything. Her body, elemental affinities, and inherent natures were entirely malleable. The slime beasts were identified by their super flexible bodies. But they weren't known for having all the elemental affinities or completely malleable inherent natures. This was not natural. Nature sought balance by distributing each creature with its share of advantages and disadvantages in such a way that it negate things in the big picture. But Reen seemed like an exception to that rule. There is something much deeper hiding behind Reen's existence. Aaron concluded. Otherwise, she couldn't have been able to keep her body after the process was over. The beast contract spell destroyed the beast's body so that the contract would get established with less conflict. And there would be naturally some conflict within the beast and the Ranker's compatibilities, no matter how synced their elemental affinities and inherent natures were. But with Reen such conflict did not exist. She was completely compatible with Aaron to the point that the spell treated her the same as the Ranker who was casting it. There was no beast tattoo as well. But he had just seen that Reen was part of his body a moment ago, sharing his senses and lending him hers. It was like Aaron and Reen had become mutually inclusive and exclusive existence at the same time. Sigh. "Reen, there's something seriously wrong with you." He said that while analyzing Reen's incoherent thoughts for a solution to being jelly and solidifying at will. It took him a while to make sense of things. He soon figured out a way to make himself return to normal and get up. Reen had puffed her cheeks after hearing that. She wanted to register her protest. But Aaron asked first before she could do so. "Reen, do you feel any different?" No. Not now. But I felt a little different while I was part of your body." "And what's with that spell anyway? And why didn't you tell me it hurt this much to go through with that process?" Reen again changed to her natural slime form before plopping onto Aaron's shoulder while complaining a lot in Aaron's head. Then she changed into a miniature girl and kept on pestering him. She soon melted into Aaron's body without any resistance, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Aaron wanted to shut her up. But an idea formed in his head after seeing Reen's fluid transformation into various shapes. It clearly wasn't possible for him to turn jelly, he still had blood, bones, and other things that made him human after all. But what if he could change into different people like her? Aaron immediately willed his body to stretch and adapt to a different shape. It was difficult at first. But he soon got the hang for it. The butcher first pictured himself to be Dom Walker, the first E-rank hunter he had killed in this timeline. Soon his hair grew and changed color. His statue increased in height and size. One could see a slightly different and naked Dom Walker standing inside a cave after Aaron's transformation was completed. Of course, his first try at such transformation didn't give him spotless results. He still couldn't get all the facial features of Dom right. And his original features were slightly making themselves apparent. But even this was enough for him. With time, he'd be able to take any shape he wanted with impeccable perfection. Dom-looking Aaron had a wicked smile plastered on his face now. He could achieve so many things with this new power of his that the possibilities froze him in his thoughts. But he prioritized one thing the most to take advantage of his newly acquired transformation powers. He needed to make contact with a certain someone while not being Aaron Idle. Julie Eckhart, what are you up to these days? Aaron smiled mildly after asking this question to nobody in particular. He knew things were going to get interesting for him now. Part 4 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.